They told all of England she had gone mad. They whispered she was dying. They said Lady Eliza Ravenshire had vanished into madness and melancholy, too fragile for society, too broken for the world. But the truth was far more sinister. In the grand halls of Blackthorn Estate, a young woman was being erased, not by illness, but by ambition. Her stepmother had buried her alive in plain sight, stealing her name, her future, her very existence. Until one autumn morning, when the most powerful duke in England looked through a garden window and saw the girl who wasn't supposed to exist. If you want to know how a forgotten daughter became a duchess who shook the foundations of Victorian society, stay until the end. Drop a like, leave a comment with your city, and let's begin. The morning fog clung to Blackthorn Hall like a funeral shroud, thick and deliberate, as if the estate itself conspired to hide what happened within its walls. Inside the library, 20-year-old Lady Eliza Ravenshire sat by the window with a leather-bound copy of Paradise Lost, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ribbon, her dress 3 seasons out of fashion. She read the same passage twice, her mind wandering to the world beyond the glass, a world she had not been permitted to enter for nearly 3 years. Outside, carriages rumbled down the lane toward neighboring estates. Laughter echoed from distant garden parties. Life continued without her, as it had been designed to do. She closed the book and traced her finger along the windowsill, where dust had gathered in the corner Helena's maids always missed. Or perhaps they didn't miss it at all. Perhaps leaving the forgotten corners dirty was simply policy in a house where the forgotten daughter lived. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Sharp, purposeful, expensive heels on marble. Eliza stiffened. The library door swung open without a knock. Countess Helena Ravenshire stood in the doorway, her emerald gown shimmering in the pale morning light, her blonde hair arranged in an elaborate style that had taken her lady's maid 2 hours to complete. She was beautiful in the way a painted portrait was beautiful. Flawless, cold, utterly untouchable. "Still hiding in here, I see," Helena said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Darling, you know the dust in these old books aggravates your condition." Eliza set the book down carefully. "I don't have a condition, Helena. I never did." "Of course you don't, dear." Helena glided into the room, her smile never wavering. "But people talk, don't they? And we must be so careful about appearances, especially now." "Especially now that my 21st birthday is 3 weeks away?" The smile flickered. Just for a moment, but Eliza caught it. "Your birthday." Helena adjusted a vase of wilting roses on the side table, not looking at her stepdaughter. "Yes, I suppose that's coming up, isn't it? Though I wonder if we shouldn't postpone any celebrations. You've been so tired lately." "I haven't been tired at all." "Haven't you?" Helena turned, her eyes sharp as cut glass. "Strange. The maids tell me you barely sleep, that you pace your room at night, that you talk to yourself. Worrying behavior, Eliza. The kind of behavior that concerns Dr. Whitmore." Eliza's blood went cold. Dr. Cornelius Whitmore was Helena's personal physician, a man with a leather bag full of tonics and a reputation for diagnosing wealthy women with convenient nervous disorders. "I don't need a doctor." "Everyone needs a doctor, darling, especially young women of delicate constitution." Helena moved closer, her perfume, gardenias, and something sharper, chemical, filling the air between them. "Your father would have wanted me to take care of you, to protect you from yourself if necessary. My father would have wanted me to inherit what is rightfully mine." The words hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Helena's smile returned, colder than before. "Your father wanted many things, Eliza, but he's gone, and I'm afraid you'll have to trust that I know what's best for this family now." She swept from the room without another word, leaving the door open behind her, a small, deliberate cruelty. The draft made the fire sputter. Eliza waited until the footsteps faded, then stood and walked to the window. From here, she could see the East Gardens where she'd played as a child, back when her father was alive and Blackthorn Hall had been filled with music and laughter instead of whispered conspiracies. Back before Helena. Her father, Lord Edmund Ravenshire, had married Helena Ashford 2 years after Eliza's mother died. Eliza had been 17, grieving and desperate for any warmth in the cold estate. She'd welcomed Helena at first, grateful for another woman in the house. What a fool she'd been. Within 6 months, Helena had redecorated the manor, replaced half the staff, and given birth to Marianne, a golden-haired daughter who became the instant center of attention. Within a year, Lord Edmund grew mysteriously ill. The doctors called it a weak heart. Helena called it tragic. Eliza called it convenient. 3 months after her father's funeral, the erasure began. It started small. Invitations to balls and dinners stopped arriving. When Eliza asked why, Helena sighed and said the families must have heard about her melancholy. Then Eliza's gowns began disappearing from her wardrobe, replaced with simpler dresses in drab colors. Her lady's maid was dismissed and never replaced. Her horse was sold because Helena claimed it was too spirited for a girl in Eliza's state. The social invitations that did arrive were intercepted. Eliza discovered this by accident when a kitchen maid mentioned seeing her name on a letter from the Duchess of Somerset, a letter Eliza never received. When she confronted Helena, her stepmother had looked genuinely surprised. "Oh, darling, I must have forgotten to pass that along. You understand, don't you? The Duchess is so terribly busy, and I didn't want to burden her with, well, with your current difficulties." "What difficulties?" "The ones everyone's been so worried about, dear. Your withdrawn behavior, your refusal to attend functions. People are starting to talk, and I'm simply trying to protect your reputation." It was masterful, really. Helena had turned Eliza's isolation into evidence of instability, then used that instability to justify further isolation, a perfect, vicious circle. The whispers spread through London society like poison in wine. Poor Lady Eliza. Such a shame. They say she's not well. The grief over her father. Perhaps it runs in the family. By the time Eliza realized what was happening, it was too late. She'd been erased. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass and closed her eyes. 3 more weeks. In 3 weeks, she would turn 21, and according to her father's will, she would inherit half the Ravenshire fortune and the right to her own household. She could leave this place. She could reclaim her life, if Helena allowed her to live that long. Well, the sound of carriages on gravel pulled her from her thoughts. Eliza looked down to see an impressive convoy arriving at the main entrance. 4 black coaches with gold trim, attended by liveried footmen. Her pulse quickened. Helena hadn't mentioned expecting guests. She moved to get a better view and saw the crest on the lead carriage, a black raven over a silver shield, crowned with oak leaves. The Blackwood crest. Eliza's hand flew to her throat. Duke Adrian Blackwood, the most powerful nobleman in England outside the royal family itself, was at Blackthorn Hall. Below, Helena emerged from the house in a flurry of silk and pearls, Marianne at her side, both of them glowing with the kind of predatory excitement that preceded a hunt. So this was why Helena had been so anxious this morning. She'd known the Duke was coming, and she'd made certain Eliza would be nowhere near the main rooms. Eliza watched as a tall figure stepped down from the lead carriage. Even from this distance, Duke Adrian Blackwood commanded attention. He moved with the casual confidence of a man who'd never had to question his place in the world. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, dressed in perfectly tailored black. Helena curtsied so low she nearly prostrated herself. Marianne's curtsy was more modest but practiced to perfection. They'd been rehearsing. The Duke said something Eliza couldn't hear. Helena laughed, that false, tinkling laugh she reserved for wealthy men. She gestured toward the house, clearly inviting him inside. But the Duke didn't immediately follow. He turned, his gaze sweeping across the estate with the assessing eye of someone who noticed everything. For a brief, heart-stopping moment, his eyes passed over the library window. Eliza stepped back from the glass. "Don't be absurd," she told herself. He couldn't possibly see her from that distance. And even if he could, why would he care? She was nobody. The forgotten daughter. The girl who didn't exist. She forced herself to return to her book, though her hands shook too much to turn the pages properly. An hour later, Molly the kitchen maid slipped into the library with a tea tray. Molly was 16, red-haired, and one of the few servants who still treated Eliza with kindness, partly because she was naturally sweet-natured, but mostly because Helena hadn't gotten around to dismissing her yet. "Brought you some tea, my lady," Molly whispered, glancing nervously at the door. "And biscuits, fresh from the oven." "Thank you, Molly. You're a treasure." Eliza poured herself a cup, grateful for the warmth. "I saw we have visitors." "Oh, yes." Molly's eyes lit up. Duke Blackwood himself. Cook's beside herself trying to prepare a luncheon grand enough. The Countess is showing him the portrait gallery now, and Miss Marianne's hanging on his every word. Of course she was. Marianne was 18, beautiful, and utterly devoted to her mother's ambitions. If Helena could marry her daughter to a duke, she'd control both the Ravenshire and Blackwood fortunes. He's ever so handsome, Molly continued dreamily. Tall as anything, with these dark eyes that see right through you. And they say he's terribly clever, reads philosophy and astronomy and all sorts of complicated things. I'm sure Marianne is very impressed. Actually, Molly leaned closer, lowering her voice. He doesn't seem all that interested in Miss Marianne. He keeps asking questions about the estate, about the family. He asked the Countess if all her daughters were present today. Eliza set down her teacup carefully. He did? Yes, and the Countess got all flustered and said yes, of course, just Marianne, her only daughter. Then he asked about the portrait in the east hallway, the one of you and your father from 5 years ago. Asked who the girl in the painting was. What did Helena say? She said it was a distant cousin who'd since passed away. Molly's voice dropped to barely a whisper. My lady, she lied right to the Duke's face. Said you were dead. The teacup trembled in Eliza's hand. Dead. Helena had declared her dead. It made a horrible kind of sense. If Eliza was officially deceased, Helena wouldn't have to worry about the inheritance or the questions or any inconvenient legal complications. She could simply erase her completely. Did the Duke believe her? I don't know, my lady, but he looked at that portrait for a long time, and then he asked if he might walk the gardens after luncheon. Eliza's heart began to pound. The gardens. The East Gardens, visible from the library window. The gardens where she spent every afternoon because they were the one place Helena allowed her to go, since none of the important visitors ever wandered that far from the main house, unless someone asked to. Molly, she said slowly, what time is luncheon scheduled to end? 2 o'clock, my lady. Why? Eliza looked at the clock on the mantel. 1:15. She stood and moved to the window. From here, she could see the winding path through the East Gardens, the stone bench beneath the willow tree, the small fountain her mother had commissioned before she died. If the Duke walked those gardens, if he came down that path, he would see her, and Helena's carefully constructed lie would crumble. The question was, did she want to be seen? For 3 years she'd been invisible, safe in her invisibility, questioning nothing, accepting her cage. But her 21st birthday was 3 weeks away, and Helena had just told a Duke she was dead. Time was running out. Eliza made a decision. Molly, go to my room and bring me my mother's shawl, the blue one with the silver embroidery. The one the Countess said to pack away? Yes. And Molly? Eliza turned, and for the first time in 3 years there was steel in her voice. Don't let anyone see you. Say it. At precisely 2:15, Eliza walked down the path into the East Gardens. She wore the blue shawl over her plain dress, and she'd taken her hair down from its simple ribbon, letting it fall in dark waves around her shoulders. It was a small act of rebellion, but it felt monumental. She sat on the stone bench beneath the willow tree and opened her book. Not Paradise Lost this time, but Wuthering Heights, the scandalous novel everyone pretended not to read, but everyone did. If she was going to be seen, she might as well be interesting. The afternoon sun filtered through the willow branches in shafts of gold. Birds sang in the hedgerows. For a moment, she could almost pretend she was free. Then she heard footsteps on the gravel path. She didn't look up. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced herself to remain still, eyes on the page, breathing steady. The footsteps slowed, stopped. I was told the East Gardens were empty, a man's voice said, deep, cultured, with an undertone of amusement. It appears I was misinformed. Eliza looked up. Duke Adrian Blackwood stood 3 paces away, hands clasped behind his back, studying her with the same intense focus Molly had described. He was even more striking up close. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that missed nothing, an aristocratic bearing that somehow didn't feel arrogant. He looked like a man who'd been trained from birth to command, and who decided to do it his own way. The gardens are rarely visited, Eliza said quietly. So the information was mostly accurate. Rarely visited, but not empty. He took a step closer. And yet I was given to understand that only the Countess and her daughter resided at Blackthorn Hall. Perhaps the Countess forgot someone. The Countess does not strike me as a woman who forgets anything. Eliza closed her book, her pulse racing. This was dangerous. If Helena discovered them talking, there would be consequences. Doctor. Whitmore would be summoned. The tonics would be administered. The asylum paperwork would be prepared. But looking into the Duke's dark, intelligent eyes, she found she didn't care. No, she said softly. She doesn't forget. She simply chooses what to remember. Adrian moved closer still until he was standing directly before her. May I? He gestured to the bench. It's your estate now, Your Grace. By rights, everything here is yours to command. Is it? Something flickered across his face, surprise perhaps, or recognition. And yet I don't recall acquiring Blackthorn Hall. Not the estate, but everything else. The land, the fortune, the people. We're all part of England's grand machinery, aren't we? And you're one of the men who operates it. He sat down, close enough that she could smell his cologne, sandalwood and something crisp, like winter air. You have opinions about machinery and power. How refreshing. Most young ladies I meet have opinions about weather and needlework. Most young ladies you meet are allowed to meet people. The words escaped before she could stop them. Adrian's eyes sharpened. And you are not? Eliza looked down at her hands, suddenly aware of how much she'd already revealed. I should go. If the Countess knew I was speaking with you. The Countess told me you were dead. The blunt statement hung between them like a blade. Eliza's breath caught. She told you what? There's a portrait in the east hallway, a young girl with her father. I asked who she was, and the Countess informed me she was a distant cousin who'd passed away some years ago from a weak constitution. Adrian's voice remained conversational, but his gaze was fierce. But that girl in the portrait, she had your eyes, and I doubt very much that you've passed away. Perhaps I'm a ghost. Ghosts don't read Bronte novels, though I suppose they might, given how Catherine haunts Heathcliff. He nodded at the book in her lap. Tell me something. Are you meant to be up here reading scandalous literature, or is this another thing the Countess has forgotten to remember? Eliza felt something crack inside her, some wall she'd built to protect herself from hope. This man, this powerful stranger, saw her, not as Helena's narrative insisted she should be seen, but as she actually was. I'm Lady Eliza Ravenshire, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lord Edmund's daughter. The Countess is my stepmother, and she's been telling people I'm ill for 3 years because you inherit when you turn 21. She stared at him. How did you? I make it my business to know things, Lady Eliza. Adrian leaned back, studying the garden as if it were a chessboard and he were planning his next 3 moves. Your father's will was quite specific. Half the estate and fortune to you at majority, with the other half held in trust for your stepmother and stepsister. Unless, of course, you were to be declared incompetent, in which case the Countess would retain control as your guardian indefinitely. You've read my father's will? I've read everyone's will. It's surprisingly useful. He turned back to her, and this time his expression was almost gentle. Tell me, Lady Eliza, do you wish to remain a ghost? What choice do I have? More than you think. He stood, offering his hand. Will you walk with me? I'd like to show you something. Eliza hesitated. Everything she'd been taught screamed warning. Young ladies did not walk alone with gentlemen. Young ladies did not take hands with men they'd just met. Young ladies stayed safe, stayed small, stayed invisible. But young ladies also didn't spend 3 years imprisoned in their own homes by stepmothers who declared them dead. She took his hand. Adrian led her deeper into the gardens, past the manicured hedgerows, and into the wilder section where ancient oaks grew thick and tangled. Here, far from the main house, they couldn't be seen from any window. Do you know why I came to Blackthorn Hall today? Adrian asked as they walked. To meet with Helena. About Marianne, I assume. The Countess certainly hopes so. She's been angling for an introduction for months. He smiled slightly. But no. I came because 3 weeks ago I received a letter from your father's former solicitor, a man named Mr. Pemberton. Eliza's breath caught. I remember him. He handled father's affairs. He was dismissed shortly after your father's death. The Countess hired her own man, Mr. Graves, to handle the estate, but Pemberton kept copies of certain documents, as good solicitors do. Adrian pulled a folded paper from his jacket. This is one of them. He handed it to her. Eliza unfolded it with shaking hands. It was a letter, written in her father's careful script. My dear Eliza, if you are reading this, I am gone, and I fear my worst suspicions about Helena have proven true. I've instructed Pemberton to deliver this to you on your 20th birthday, as I trust you'll be old enough by then to understand. I made a terrible mistake marrying Helena. I saw it too late. How she manipulated situations, how she lied with a smile, how she viewed people as pawns. I've changed my will to protect you, but I fear it may not be enough. She wants the fortune, and she'll do anything to get it. Trust no one in the house except Pemberton. Keep this letter safe, and remember that you are stronger than she could ever be because you have something she doesn't. Integrity. Your loving father, Edmund. Tears blurred Eliza's vision. Her father had known. He'd seen what Helena was, and he'd tried to warn her. Pemberton sent this to you? She whispered. To you, technically. But the letter never arrived, did it? Because the Countess controls all correspondence to and from Blackthorn Hall. Adrian's voice was hard now, angry. Pemberton became concerned, so he sent a copy to me, along with a request that I investigate the situation. He suspected you were being kept isolated against your will. Why would he contact you? Because 3 years ago, your father and I sat together at Parliament. We discussed estate law, inheritance rights, the protection of vulnerable heirs. Adrian met her eyes. He told me that if anything ever happened to him, he feared his daughter would need powerful friends. He asked if I would be willing to serve as one. Eliza couldn't breathe. Her father had planned for this. He'd known Helena would come for her, and he'd arranged protection from beyond the grave. So you came here to see if I was truly ill, she said slowly, or if I was being held prisoner. I came to find out the truth, and now I have. Adrian's expression hardened. The Countess has committed fraud, false imprisonment, and defamation. With proper evidence, I can bring charges that will destroy her social standing and remove her as your guardian. She has Dr. Whitmore. He'll testify that I'm unstable. Whitmore is a hack who'll say anything for money. His testimony won't hold against independent examination. Adrian stepped closer. Lady Eliza, I can help you, but I need to know, do you want to be helped, or have you grown comfortable in your cage? The question stung, as it was meant to. I've never been comfortable, she said fiercely. I've been surviving. There's a difference. Then let me help you do more than survive. Why? The word burst out before she could stop it. Why do you care what happens to me? You don't know me. You owe me nothing. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. Because I know what it's like to be underestimated, to have people assume you're weak because you're young, or naive because you're kind. My own father tried to control every aspect of my life until I turned 21 and took my inheritance by force. He didn't speak to me for a year afterward. He smiled grimly. I learned then that the only way to defeat people who want to control you is to refuse to be controlled. To stand up, even when it's terrifying, and say, no more. Helena won't let me say no. Helena doesn't have a choice anymore. Adrian held out his hand again. Come back to London with me. Today. Now. I'll provide you with legal counsel, protection, and a place to stay until your birthday. Once you're 21, you'll have access to your inheritance and legal independence. Helena's power over you ends. Eliza stared at his outstretched hand. Everything in her life had led to this moment. 3 years of erasure, of suffocation, of slow death by invisibility. She could take his hand and risk everything, or she could return to the library and wait for Helena to win. If I leave, she said slowly, Helena will say I ran away, that I'm unstable, just as she claimed. She'll use it against me. Let her try. I'm a duke, Lady Eliza. My word carries weight that hers never will. She'll fight back. She'll destroy anyone who helps me. Then she'll have to destroy me first. Adrian's eyes blazed with something that looked like genuine fury. And I promise you, I'm much harder to destroy than she anticipates. Eliza looked back toward Blackthorn Hall. barely visible through the trees. Inside those walls, Helena was probably entertaining the Duke's men, spinning stories about her devoted care for her poor, departed stepdaughter. Marianne was probably practicing her laugh, her curtsy, her doe-eyed admiration. Neither of them knew the Duke was out here, offering the ghost a resurrection. Eliza took a deep breath and placed her hand in Adrian's. "Then let's make me very hard to destroy, too." They returned to the house through the servants' entrance, which Adrian navigated with surprising ease. "I always make friends with the staff," he explained quietly. "They know everything worth knowing." In the entrance hall, they found Helena holding court with Adrian's traveling companions, two older gentlemen who looked like lawyers and a younger man who was clearly Adrian's secretary. Marianne sat prettily on a settee, her golden curls arranged to perfection. Helena's smile froze when she saw Eliza. "There you are, darling," she said, her voice high and brittle. "I was just telling His Grace about your delicate health. You shouldn't be wandering the gardens without supervision." "I had supervision," Eliza said calmly. "His Grace was kind enough to escort me." The color drained from Helena's face. "His Grace was... You were together?" "Lady Eliza and I had a fascinating conversation about literature and estate law," Adrian said smoothly. "She's remarkably well read for someone who's supposedly been too ill to receive visitors for 3 years. She has good days and bad days." Helena's hands clenched in her skirts. "Dr. Whitmore can explain." "I'm sure he can. I look forward to hearing his explanation in court." The word court fell like a stone into still water. "Court?" Helena's laugh was shrill. "Your Grace, I don't understand." "Don't you?" Adrian's voice remained pleasant, but there was steel beneath it. "Let me clarify. Lady Eliza will be returning to London with me today. She'll remain under my protection until her 21st birthday, at which point her inheritance will be transferred according to her father's will. Any attempt to prevent her departure or to challenge her legal rights will result in a formal investigation into your guardianship, an investigation I suspect you won't enjoy." Marianne gasped. "Mother?" Helena's mask cracked. For just a moment, Eliza saw the rage beneath, pure, venomous hatred. "You can't do this," Helena hissed. "She's unstable. She needs care. She's standing right here," Eliza interrupted, her voice steady. "And I'm perfectly capable of speaking for myself." She turned to Adrian. "I'll need to pack a few things." "Of course. I'll have my men assist you." "That won't be necessary." Eliza looked directly at Helena. "I won't be taking much. After all, most of what's in my room belonged to my mother. I wouldn't want to be accused of stealing." Helena's face went white, then red. "You ungrateful—" "Mrs. Ashworth," Adrian said, dropping the title Countess, with deliberate precision. "I suggest you choose your next words very carefully. Lady Eliza is still your stepdaughter, and any insult to her is an insult to me." The threat was clear. Helena snapped her mouth shut. Eliza turned and walked toward the stairs, her head high, her steps steady. Behind her, she heard Marianne whisper, "Mother, what's happening?" And Helena's sharp response, "Quiet, you fool." In her room, Eliza packed quickly. There wasn't much to take. Her mother's shawl, a few books, the locket her father had given her before he died. Everything else belonged to a life she was leaving behind. Molly appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. "My lady, is it true? You're leaving with the Duke?" "It's true." "But what will happen to you?" Eliza turned, and for the first time in 3 years she smiled, really smiled. "I don't know, Molly. Isn't that wonderful?" 20 minutes later, Eliza descended the main staircase with a single bag. Adrian waited in the entrance hall, his men arranged around him like a guard. Helena and Marianne stood to one side, both looking murderous. "This isn't over," Helena said quietly as Eliza passed. "You'll regret this." Eliza stopped. She turned and looked at the woman who'd stolen 3 years of her life. "No," she said softly, "I won't. Because regret requires caring what you think, and I'm done caring." She walked out of Blackthorn Hall with her head high and didn't look back. Outside, Adrian helped her into his carriage. As the horses started forward, Eliza watched the estate shrink behind them, the house where she'd been born, where she'd been happy, where she'd been buried alive. Are you all right? Adrian asked quietly. Eliza thought about it. The fear, the uncertainty, the sheer audacity of what she'd just done. Ask me in 3 weeks, she said. Adrian smiled. Fair enough. As the carriage rolled toward London, Eliza pressed her hand against the window and whispered a promise to herself. I will never be invisible again. Behind them, in Blackthorn Hall, Helena stood at the window of the portrait gallery, staring at the painting of young Eliza and her father. Her expression was cold, calculating, and very, very dangerous. The girl had escaped, but the game was far from over. The journey to London took 6 hours, and with every mile that passed, Eliza felt the weight of Blackthorn Hall lifting from her shoulders, and the weight of what she'd done settling onto them instead. She sat across from Adrian in the spacious carriage, watching the countryside roll past in shades of amber and gold. He'd given her space, occupying himself with correspondence and allowing her the silence she desperately needed. But as the sun began its descent and the city's distant smoke became visible on the horizon, he finally spoke. You're wondering if you made the right choice. Eliza turned from the window. How did you know? Because I've seen that expression before. In my own mirror, the day I left my father's estate. Adrian set aside his papers. Doubt is natural, Lady Eliza. You've just torn your entire world apart. It would be stranger if you weren't questioning it. Helena will fight back. She has too much to lose not to. Yes, she will. Adrian's honesty was almost refreshing, which is why we need to move quickly and strategically. The moment we arrive in London, rumors will begin spreading. The Countess will control the narrative if we let her, painting you as an unstable girl who ran away with a rake, and me as the villain who corrupted you. Eliza felt her stomach tighten. Can she do that? She'll certainly try. Helena Ashworth is many things, but stupid isn't one of them. He leaned forward, his dark eyes intent. But we have advantages she doesn't. Truth. Documentation. And the fact that I'm a duke with more political connections than she could dream of having. What if it's not enough? Then we make it enough. Adrian's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Lady Eliza, I need you to understand something. The next 3 weeks are going to be brutal. Society will gossip. People will question your character, your sanity, your virtue. Helena will have Dr. Whitmore swear affidavits about your mental state. She'll claim you were kidnapped, seduced, manipulated. She'll drag your name through every drawing room and scandal sheet in London. You're not exactly selling this rescue. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. I'm preparing you for war, because that's what this is, a war for your future, your fortune, and your freedom. If you're going to win, you need to be ready for how ugly it will get. Eliza thought of the 3 years she'd spent as a ghost, silent and invisible. She thought of Helena's smile, sharp as a blade. She thought of her father's letter, still folded in her pocket. I'm ready, she said. What do we do first? Adrian pulled a folder from his leather case. First, we establish your credibility. I've arranged for you to stay at Ashford House, my London residence. You'll have your own wing, a full staff, and a chaperone. Lady Catherine Pembroke, my aunt, has agreed to act as your companion. She's 70, formidable, and utterly unimpeachable. Won't people talk about me living in your house? They'll talk no matter where you live. At least this way you're under my protection. He handed her a document. This is a formal statement prepared by Mr. Pemberton, detailing the irregularities in your father's estate management and Helena's isolation tactics. We'll file it with the courts tomorrow. Tomorrow? Speed is essential. The longer Helena has to prepare her counterattack, the more damage she can do. Adrian's expression softened slightly. I know this is overwhelming, but you're not alone anymore. I have lawyers, investigators, political allies. All of them are now working for you. Why? The question escaped before Eliza could stop it. You barely know me. Why are you risking your reputation for this? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, more personal, less calculated. Because when I was 21, my father tried to force me into a marriage with a woman I didn't love. He controlled my inheritance, my social connections, everything. He threatened to disinherit me if I didn't comply. He looked out the window, his jaw tight. I had resources and power, and it still nearly destroyed me to break free. You have neither. If I don't help you, no one will. And I'll be damned if I let another young person be crushed by a controlling guardian simply because they can. Eliza studied him, this powerful, complicated man who'd walked into her garden and changed everything. Your father, did you ever reconcile? He died 3 years ago. We never spoke again after I left. Something painful flickered across Adrian's face. I don't regret my choice, but I regret that he never understood why I made it. The carriage fell silent again, but this time the silence felt different, shared. As they entered London's outskirts, Adrian straightened, his mask of ducal authority sliding back into place. One more thing. Tomorrow night there's a reception at the Hartwick estate. Half of London society will be there. You want me to attend? I want you to be seen. With me, with Lady Catherine, perfectly healthy and perfectly sane. We need to counter Helena's narrative before it takes root. He met her eyes. I won't force you, but it would help immensely. Eliza's hands trembled in her lap. 3 years ago, she would have loved nothing more than to attend a London reception, but 3 years of isolation had changed her. The thought of walking into a room full of strangers, all of them whispering about her, judging her. I'll do it, she heard herself say. Adrian smiled. Good. Then let's show London what a resurrected ghost looks like. The carriage turned onto Grosvenor Square, and Ashford House rose before them, a magnificent Georgian mansion that made Blackthorn Hall look like a country cottage. Servants lined the entrance, and standing at the top of the steps was a tall, silver-haired woman in deep purple silk who could only be Lady Catherine Pembroke. As the carriage stopped, Adrian turned to Eliza one last time. Last chance to change your mind. Eliza looked at Ashford House, at Lady Catherine, at the life she was stepping into, uncertain and terrifying and utterly different from the cage she'd left behind. I'm not changing my mind, she said firmly. I'm changing my life. She stepped out of the carriage and into a world that was finally, terrifyingly, hers to claim. Lady Catherine Pembroke was exactly as formidable as Adrian had promised. So you're the girl my nephew dragged out of Hertfordshire, she said, looking Eliza up and down with sharp gray eyes. Thin as a rail and pale as milk. We'll fix that. Can't have you fainting at the Hartwick reception. Society would never let you live it down. Aunt Catherine, Adrian said warningly. Oh, hush. The girl needs honesty, not coddling. Catherine took Eliza's arm with surprising gentleness. Come along, child. I'll show you to your rooms. Adrian, make yourself useful and tell cook we need a proper dinner. None of that fashionable nonsense with 12 tiny courses. The girl needs food. She swept Eliza into the house before either of them could respond. Ashford House was magnificent. All soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and artwork that probably cost more than Blackthorn Hall's annual income. But Catherine didn't give Eliza time to gawk. She marched her up 3 flights of stairs to a suite of rooms in the east wing. Here we are. Your sitting room, bedroom, dressing room, and private bath. I'm in the next suite over, so if you need anything in the night, just knock. Catherine released her arm and studied her again. Now, tell me the truth. Are you all right, or are you about to have a nervous collapse? The blunt question startled a laugh out of Eliza. I'm not sure yet. Fair enough. Most girls who escape wicked stepmothers need at least a week to process it. Catherine moved to the window and drew back the curtains, letting in the last rays of sunset. Adrian told me what that woman did to you. 3 years of isolation and psychological torture. It's unconscionable. He told you everything? Adrian tells me everything. I'm the only family he trusts. Catherine turned, her expression softening. He's putting himself at considerable risk to help you, you know. If this goes badly, Helena could ruin his political standing. He's already received 2 letters warning him to stay out of Ravenshire family business. Eliza's stomach dropped. From whom? Lord Ashford, Helena's brother, and Sir Marcus Whitmore, the doctor's cousin and a member of Parliament. They're circling the wagons, protecting their own. Catherine crossed her arms. Which is why tomorrow night is so important. Adrian needs to show society that he's not some rake who abducted a mentally unstable girl. He's a duke protecting an heiress from fraud and false imprisonment. And I need to prove I'm not mentally unstable. Precisely. Can you do that? Eliza thought of the library at Blackthorn Hall, the years of silence, the careful erasure of her existence. She thought of Helena's smile and Marianne's pitying looks, and Dr. Whitmore's cold fingers checking her pulse while murmuring about hysteria. "I can do that," she said quietly. "I have to." Catherine's smile was sharp and approving. "Good. Then let's turn you into someone they can't dismiss." The next morning, Catherine launched a campaign of transformation that was equal parts military strategy and theatrical production. A parade of London's finest dressmakers arrived at Ashford House, carrying bolts of silk and satin in every color imaginable. Catherine rejected the first three because they were too safe, too forgettable, too exactly what everyone expects a traumatized girl to wear. "We're not dressing a victim," she declared, dismissing a pale pink gown with a wave of her hand. "We're dressing a woman who refuses to be erased. Show me something with backbone." The fourth dressmaker, a shrewd French woman named Madame Laurent, understood immediately. She returned an hour later with a gown in deep sapphire blue, cut in the latest London style, with silver embroidery along the bodice. "A woman who wears this is not afraid," Madame Laurent said. "She is not apologizing for existing." Catherine smiled. "Perfect. We'll take it." While the gown was being fitted, a hairdresser arrived to do something about Eliza's prison hair, as Catherine called it. 3 years without a proper lady's maid. We're lucky you're not bald." "I did my best," Eliza protested. "Your best resulted in split ends and a style from 1844. Sit still." By noon, Eliza barely recognized herself in the mirror. Her dark hair was arranged in an elegant style that framed her face. The sapphire gown fit perfectly, and Catherine's own jeweler had provided a delicate silver necklace that caught the light when she moved. "You look like yourself," Catherine said quietly, standing behind her. "Not the girl Helena wanted you to be. The woman your father would be proud of." Eliza's eyes burned with sudden tears. "He would have loved all this drama, wouldn't he?" "From what Adrian told me, your father was a man who valued justice above propriety. Yes, I think he'd be delighted." Catherine squeezed her shoulder. "Now, let's discuss strategy for tonight." They spent the afternoon in what Catherine called combat preparation, reviewing who would be at the Hartwick reception, what questions Eliza might face, and how to navigate conversations that were really interrogations. "Lady Hartwick will ask about your health," Catherine predicted. "She'll phrase it as concern, but what she really wants to know is whether you're mad." "What do I say?" You smile and thank her for her concern, then immediately change the subject to something she cares about, like her son's recent engagement or her new conservatory. Make her talk about herself, and she'll forget to pry into you. That seems manipulative. It's survival, darling. Society is a battlefield, and the weapons are words. Catherine poured them both tea. "Lord Pemberton will ask about Adrian's intentions. He's a gossip who loves inserting himself into scandals." "What are Adrian's intentions?" Catherine gave her a knowing look. "That's an excellent question. What do you think they are?" Eliza felt heat rise to her cheeks. "He's helping me claim my inheritance. Nothing more." Keep telling yourself that." Catherine sipped her tea, looking amused. "For what it's worth, I've never seen my nephew work this hard to help anyone. Usually he solves problems with money and delegation. But you? He's personally involved. Make of that what you will." Before Eliza could respond, Adrian himself entered the sitting room, looking every inch the powerful Duke in his evening clothes. "Ready for battle?" he asked. Eliza stood, smoothing her gown nervously. "As ready as I'll ever be." Adrian's expression shifted when he saw her, something flickering across his face, too quickly to name. "You look magnificent." "Madame Laurent's work, not mine." "I disagree. The gown is just fabric. You're what makes it magnificent." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" Catherine beamed. "Have her home by midnight, nephew, and try not to start any duels." "I make no promises." As they descended the grand staircase, Eliza felt her pulse racing. In a few minutes, she would step into her first London society event in 3 years. She would face the whispers, the judgment, the endless speculation, but she wouldn't face it alone. Adrian seemed to sense her nervousness. "If it becomes too much," he said quietly as they reached the entrance hall, "we can leave. Just say the word." "No." Eliza lifted her chin. Helena wants me to hide. I'm done hiding. Adrian smiled, a real smile, not his usual carefully controlled expression. Then let's give them something to talk about. The carriage ride to Hartwick Manor took 20 minutes, and with every minute, Eliza's anxiety grew. By the time they arrived, her hands were shaking. "Breathe," Adrian murmured as footmen opened the carriage door. "You're Lady Eliza Ravenshire, daughter of Lord Edmund, and you have every right to be here." She took a breath, then another. The music and laughter from inside the manor washed over her like a wave. Adrian stepped out first, then turned and offered his hand. Eliza took it and stepped into the light. The Hartwick reception was exactly as overwhelming as she'd feared, and somehow worse. The moment they entered the ballroom, conversation stuttered and died. Heads turned. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Eliza felt 100 eyes on her, dissecting every detail of her appearance, her posture, her very existence. "Steady," Adrian murmured, his hand at her elbow. "Don't let them see you falter." Lady Hartwick descended on them immediately, her smile bright and predatory. "Your Grace, what a delightful surprise. We didn't expect to see you tonight." Lady Hartwick: "Thank you for the invitation." Adrian's smile was equally bright, equally false. "May I present Lady Eliza Ravenshire? I believe you knew her father, Lord Edmund." "Lady Eliza?" Lady Hartwick's eyes went wide. "My dear, we heard you were— that is, there were rumors of poor health. Greatly exaggerated, I assure you." Eliza forced herself to smile. "I've been recovering at my family estate, but I'm feeling much improved now." "How wonderful!" Lady Hartwick's gaze flickered between them, calculating. "And you're staying with His Grace? How unconventional." "Lady Catherine Pembroke is serving as my chaperone," Eliza said smoothly, remembering Catherine's coaching. "She's been extraordinarily kind." Before Lady Hartwick could probe further, Adrian steered Eliza away with practiced ease. "Well done," he murmured. "First encounter survived." But the encounters kept coming. Lord Pemberton wanted to know why she'd left Blackthorn Hall so suddenly. Lady Somerset asked pointed questions about Dr. Whitmore's diagnosis. The Honourable Mrs. Fletcher wondered aloud whether Eliza's stepmother knew where she was. Each question was a small knife, cutting and probing. Eliza answered them all with the responses Catherine had drilled into her, but she could feel herself fraying at the edges. The ballroom was too hot, too crowded, too loud. The whispers followed her everywhere. "Did you hear she ran away with the Duke? They say she was locked in an asylum. Poor thing looks terrified. Perhaps the Countess was right about her state of mind." Adrian stayed close, his presence a shield against the worst of it. But even he couldn't stop the gossip or the speculation or the thinly veiled accusations dressed as concern. Then across the ballroom, Eliza saw a familiar face. Marianne. Her stepsister stood near the refreshment table in a gown of ivory silk, her golden curls perfect, her expression carefully neutral. But when their eyes met, Marianne's mask slipped for just a moment. She looked afraid. Before Eliza could process what that meant, a man appeared at Marianne's side, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of authoritative bearing that demanded attention. "That's Lord Ashford," Adrian said quietly, following her gaze. "Helena's brother and one of the most powerful men in Parliament. Be careful." Lord Ashford said something to Marianne, then began walking directly toward them. The crowd parted like water. "Your Grace!" Lord Ashford's voice was deep and smooth as honey. "What a pleasure to see you, and this must be my dear niece, Lady Eliza. How delightful to find you well." "Lord Ashford," Eliza's mouth was dry. "I didn't know you were in London. I came as soon as I heard about your departure from Blackthorn Hall. Your stepmother is quite worried." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "She asked me to check on your well-being, to ensure you're being properly cared for." "Lady Eliza is under my protection," Adrian said coolly. "Her well-being is assured." "I'm certain it is, Your Grace, but surely you understand a family's concern when a young woman leaves her home so precipitously, without informing her guardian, without any explanation." Lord Ashford turned his attention fully to Eliza. "Your stepmother fears you may have been unduly influenced, that perhaps you're not thinking clearly." There it was. The accusation, dressed in concern. Eliza felt every eye in the ballroom on her. This was the moment Catherine had warned her about, the moment when Helena's allies would try to paint her as unstable, irrational, incompetent. She could crumble, or she could fight. "My stepmother," Eliza said clearly, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent ballroom, "has been declaring me mentally unfit for 3 years. She isolated me from society, intercepted my correspondence, and told people I was dying. She did this because in 3 weeks I inherit half my father's estate, and she wants to prevent that by having me declared incompetent." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lord Ashford's expression hardened. "That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth. And I have documentation to prove it." Eliza stepped forward, her fear burning away in a sudden rush of fury. "My father's solicitor has records of financial irregularities, letters that were never delivered, witnesses who will testify to my isolation. Your sister is a fraud, Lord Ashford, and I'm done pretending otherwise." The ballroom erupted in whispers. Lord Ashford's face went red. "You ungrateful child! After everything Helena has done for you—" "She erased me." Eliza's voice shook, but she didn't back down. "She told the Duke I was dead. She was preparing to send me to an asylum. Those are not the actions of a loving guardian." "They're the actions of a criminal," Adrian added, his voice cutting through the chaos. "And I have every intention of proving it in court." Lord Ashford looked between them, his expression venomous. "You're making a grave mistake, Your Grace. My sister has powerful friends. You may be a duke, but even dukes can be destroyed by scandal." "Then let them try." Adrian's smile was sharp as broken glass. "I welcome the challenge." For a long moment, the two men stared at each other. A silent battle of wills and power. Then Lord Ashford turned on his heel and strode from the ballroom, Marianne hurrying after him. The moment they were gone, the ballroom exploded in conversation. Everyone was talking at once, speculation and gossip flowing like wine. Lady Hartwick appeared at Eliza's elbow, her eyes gleaming. "My dear, what drama! You must tell me everything." But Eliza couldn't breathe. The ballroom was spinning, the walls closing in. She just declared war on one of the most powerful families in England in front of half of London society. What had she done? "Excuse us," Adrian said firmly, guiding Eliza toward the terrace doors. "Lady Eliza needs some air." He led her outside into the cool night, away from the suffocating crowd. Eliza gripped the stone balustrade, her whole body shaking. "I shouldn't have said all that," she gasped. "I just made everything worse. You told the truth." Adrian stood beside her, solid and unshakable. "And yes, Helena will use it against you. Lord Ashford will rally his allies. The scandal sheets will have a field day. But you also just showed every person in that ballroom that you're not the broken girl Helena claimed you were. You're strong, articulate, and willing to fight." "I don't feel strong. I feel terrified." "Good. Fear means you understand the stakes." Adrian turned her gently to face him. "Eliza, listen to me. You just did something incredibly brave. Most people spend their entire lives avoiding confrontation, swallowing injustice, staying silent. You spoke up. That matters. Even if it destroys me, it won't destroy you. I won't let it." His hands were warm on her shoulders, his dark eyes fierce. "We're going to win this. Together." The certainty in his voice was almost enough to make her believe him. Almost. A sound from the terrace doorway made them both turn. Marianne stood there, her ivory gown ghostly in the lamplight. "I need to talk to you," she said to Eliza, her voice small and frightened. "Please, before my uncle comes back." Adrian tensed. This could be a trap. "It's not." Marianne stepped forward, her hands clasped together. "I swear it's not. I need to tell you something. Something about my mother." Eliza and Adrian exchanged glances. "All right," Eliza said slowly. "What is it?" Marianne glanced back at the ballroom, then moved closer, lowering her voice. "My mother has been planning this for months. The asylum, the declaration of incompetence, she has doctors ready to sign affidavits, legal documents prepared. She was going to have you committed the day before your birthday." Ice flooded Eliza's veins. How do you know this? I heard her talking to Uncle Ashford last week. They were in the study, and I was in the hallway. They didn't know I was listening. Marianne's voice cracked. She said you were becoming too difficult to manage, that you were asking too many questions about the inheritance. She said it would be simpler if you just disappeared. Disappeared. Adrian's voice was deadly quiet. You mean killed? No, at least I don't think so. Just locked away somewhere no one would find you. Marianne looked at Eliza with something that might have been genuine guilt. I should have warned you. I should have done something, but I was afraid of her too. Why are you telling me now? Because watching you tonight, seeing you stand up to Uncle Ashford, Marianne's eyes filled with tears. I realized I don't want to be like her. I don't want to be the kind of person who destroys people for money, even if that person is my own mother. Eliza wanted to trust her, but 3 years of Helena's manipulation had taught her to question everything. What else do you know? Adrian asked. Dr. Whitmore has already signed commitment papers. They're dated for 2 days from now, the day you would have turned 21 if you'd stayed at Blackthorn Hall. Marianne pulled a folded paper from her reticule. I took this from my mother's desk. It's a copy. I thought you might need it. She handed it to Adrian, who unfolded it quickly. His expression darkened as he read. This is a formal medical declaration of mental incompetence, he said quietly. Signed by Dr. Whitmore and countersigned by 2 other physicians. It claims Eliza suffers from acute melancholia, hysteria, and delusional thinking, that she poses a danger to herself and others. None of which is true, Eliza said, though her voice shook. Truth doesn't matter if the paperwork is filed before your birthday. Adrian looked at Marianne. Is there more? Just that my mother is planning to file emergency guardianship papers with the court tomorrow morning. She's going to claim that Eliza was kidnapped by you and needs to be returned to family care immediately. Of course she is. Adrian's jaw tightened. Thank you for the warning, Miss Ashford. This information is invaluable. Marianne nodded, then looked at Eliza. I know you have no reason to forgive me. I stood by while she hurt you. I'm complicit in everything she did. Yes, Eliza said quietly. You are. Marianne flinched as if slapped. But you're here now, Eliza continued, warning me, helping me. That counts for something. Does it? I don't know yet. Ask me when this is over. Marianne smiled sadly. If we both survive it. She turned and disappeared back into the ballroom, leaving Eliza and Adrian alone on the terrace. Can we trust her? Eliza asked. I don't know, but the paperwork is real and the threat is credible. Adrian folded the document carefully. We need to move faster than I planned. If Helena files those guardianship papers tomorrow, we'll be fighting a legal battle on multiple fronts. What do we do? Adrian was quiet for a long moment, thinking. When he spoke, his voice was decisive. We go on the offensive. Tomorrow morning, before Helena can file anything, we'll file our own petition with the court, not just challenging her guardianship, but demanding a full investigation into her management of your father's estate. We'll make this public, messy, and impossible for her to sweep under the rug. That will destroy any chance of resolving this quietly. Quiet resolution was never an option. Helena made sure of that when she decided to have you declared incompetent. Adrian met her eyes. This is going to get ugly, Eliza. Uglier than tonight. Are you ready for that? Eliza thought of her father's letter, still tucked in her pocket. She thought of 3 years in silence, 3 years erased, 3 years stolen. She thought of Marianne's warning and Helena's cold smile and the asylum papers with her name on them. I'm ready, she said. Let's burn it all down. Adrian's words still hung in the air between them. Let's burn it all down. When the terrace door burst open and Lady Catherine appeared, her face pale in the lamplight. We need to leave, now. Adrian straightened immediately. What's happened? Lord Ashford just announced to the entire ballroom that he's filing emergency papers with the magistrate tonight. He's claiming Eliza was abducted under duress and is being held against her will. Catherine's voice was tight with controlled fury. He's brought 2 constables with him. They're waiting in the entrance hall with a warrant for her immediate return to family custody. Eliza's blood turned to ice. Tonight? But Marianne said tomorrow. Marianne either lied or didn't know the full plan. Adrian grabbed Eliza's hand. How much time do we have? Minutes. Lord Ashford is currently making a show of demanding to speak with you privately, but that's just theater. The moment you refuse, he'll have the constables move in. Catherine pulled a heavy cloak from her arm and wrapped it around Eliza's shoulders. There's a servant's exit through the kitchens. My carriage is waiting in the mews. If we run, it looks like an admission of guilt, Adrian said. If we stay, they take her. Catherine's eyes were fierce. We can fight the legal battle tomorrow, but only if she's free to fight it. Once they have her in custody, Helena can move her anywhere, including straight to that asylum. Adrian's jaw tightened. He looked at Eliza, and in his eyes she saw the terrible calculation happening. Reputation versus safety, propriety versus survival. Go, he said. Both of you. Take her to the townhouse on Belgrave Square, the one under my mother's name. No one will think to look there. What about you? Eliza asked. I'll stay and face Ashford, buy you time. Adrian cupped her face briefly, a gesture so intimate and unexpected that Eliza's breath caught. Trust me. I'll fix this. Adrian, go, now. Catherine grabbed Eliza's arm and pulled her toward a narrow side door. They slipped through it into a dimly lit corridor that smelled of beeswax and roses. Behind them, Eliza could hear voices rising in the ballroom. Lord Ashford's commanding tone, the murmur of the crowd, the heavy footsteps of the constables. They were coming. Catherine moved fast for a woman of 70, her silk skirts rustling as she led Eliza through a maze of servants' passages. They passed startled footmen and wide-eyed maids, descended a narrow staircase, and emerged into the chaos of the kitchen. Lady Catherine! The head cook looked shocked. What are you— No time, Mrs. Bellamy. We need the back exit. The cook took one look at Eliza's terrified face and nodded sharply. Through the scullery! Quick! They ran through the scullery, past hanging copper pots and stacks of dirty dishes, and out into the cold night air. The mews behind Hartwick Manor was dark and narrow, lit only by a single gas lamp. Catherine's carriage waited in the shadows, her driver already alert. Belgrave Square, Catherine ordered as they climbed inside. Fast as you can without drawing attention. The carriage lurched forward just as shouts erupted from the manor. Eliza looked back through the small rear window and saw constables pouring out of the servants' entrance, lanterns bobbing in the darkness. They're following us, she whispered. They won't catch us. My driver knows every back street in London. Catherine pulled the curtains closed. Sit back. Don't let them see your face. The carriage careened through narrow alleys and side streets, the driver taking turns so sharp that Eliza had to grip the seat to keep from being thrown. Behind them, she could hear the rattle of other carriages, the shouts of men giving chase. Why are they doing this? Eliza's voice cracked. I'm not a criminal. I haven't broken any laws. You're worth a fortune, and you're 3 weeks away from controlling it. That makes you dangerous. Catherine's expression was grim. Helena has decided that if she can't manipulate you, she'll imprison you. And men like Lord Ashford have enough power to make imprisonment look like protection. The carriage swerved violently, throwing them both sideways. Through the curtain's gap, Eliza glimpsed a constable on horseback, close enough to touch the carriage door. Catherine pounded on the roof. Faster! The driver cracked his whip, and the horses surged forward. They shot through an intersection, narrowly missing a night cart, and plunged into the warren of streets near Covent Garden. Here, the roads were too narrow for easy pursuit, too crowded with late-night vendors and theater-goers. The sounds of pursuit faded. 20 minutes later, they emerged onto a wide, quiet square lined with elegant townhouses. The carriage slowed to a normal pace, civilized and unremarkable. Catherine finally exhaled. We lost them. Eliza's hands were shaking so hard she had to clasp them together. For how long? Long enough, I hope. The townhouse on Belgrave Square was smaller than Ashford House, but no less elegant. A narrow building of white stone with black iron railings and window boxes that would be full of flowers in spring. Catherine had a key, which she used to let them in through a side entrance. Inside, the house was dark and silent. Dust covers shrouded the furniture like ghosts. Adrian's mother died 5 years ago, Catherine explained, lighting a lamp. He kept the house but rarely uses it. Only a skeleton staff comes weekly to maintain it. She moved through the rooms with practiced ease, lighting more lamps, pulling dust covers off chairs and settees. You'll be safe here, for tonight, at least. Eliza sank into a chair, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow, we fight back. Catherine poured 2 glasses of brandy from a decanter and pressed one into Eliza's hands. Drink. You're in shock. Eliza drank, coughing at the burn. Catherine, I just fled from constables. Doesn't that make me a fugitive? Only if their warrant was legitimate, which I doubt. Catherine settled into the chair across from her. Lord Ashford moved too fast. Emergency custody orders require a judge's signature, and most judges are in bed by this hour. My guess is he intimidated some minor magistrate into signing papers without proper review. But he has papers. That's all that matters to the constables. For now. But once Adrian's lawyers get involved, those papers won't hold up. Catherine leaned forward, her expression serious. Eliza, I need you to understand something. What happened tonight is just the beginning. Helena and her allies are going to use every trick, every connection, every dirty tactic they have. They'll call you mad, claim you're a danger to yourself, question your virtue, drag your name through the mud. I know. Do you? Because knowing intellectually and living through it are very different things. Catherine's voice softened. I watched my nephew nearly break when his father tried to control his life. He had wealth and title and power, and it still almost destroyed him. You have none of those advantages. This fight is going to be brutal. Eliza thought of the 3 years she'd spent as a ghost, the slow suffocation of erasure, the quiet violence of being forgotten while still alive. I'm already broken, she said quietly. Helena broke me years ago. The only question now is whether I stay broken or put myself back together. Catherine studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, then let's put you back together in a way that makes you unbreakable. They spent the next hour discussing strategy. Catherine had connections throughout London society. Women who owed her favors, men who respected her judgment, families who would listen if she vouched for Eliza's sanity and character. We need witnesses, Catherine said. People who can testify that you're of sound mind, that you weren't coerced, that you made a rational choice to leave Blackthorn Hall. Who would do that? Everyone at the Hartwick reception saw me flee from constables. They saw you escape an illegal arrest. There's a difference. Catherine made notes on a piece of paper. I'll contact the Duchess of Somerset first. She knew your father and always suspected something was wrong with Helena. Then Lady Margrave. She despises Lord Ashford and would love an excuse to oppose him publicly. A knock at the door made them both freeze. Catherine stood slowly, her hand moving to a letter opener on the side table. A pitiful weapon, but better than nothing. Stay here, she whispered to Eliza. She moved to the entrance hall. Eliza heard the door open, heard Catherine's sharp intake of breath, then Adrian's voice, low and urgent. It's me. Let me in. He entered the sitting room looking disheveled and furious, his cravat loose, his hair disordered. There was a fresh bruise darkening along his jaw. What happened? Catherine demanded. Lord Ashford happened. Adrian touched his jaw and winced. He accused me of kidnapping and corruption. I told him to prove it. He took a swing at me in front of half the ballroom. He hit you? Eliza stood, horrified. He tried. I blocked most of it. Adrian's smile was sharp and dangerous. Then I had him removed from the Hartwick estate for assault. Lord Hartwick was only too happy to oblige. Apparently, Ashford's been pressuring him over some property dispute. So you made an enemy of one of the most powerful men in Parliament by having him thrown out of a party, Catherine said flatly. I made an enemy of him the moment I helped Eliza. At least this way, I got to enjoy it. Adrian moved to the window, peering through the curtains at the dark square. The constables are searching every major house in Mayfair. They'll work their way here eventually. How long do we have? A day. Maybe 2 if we're lucky. Adrian turned back to them, his expression grim. I spoke with my solicitors on the way here. The emergency custody order Ashford obtained is legally questionable, but it exists. And as long as it exists, Eliza is technically a fugitive from family custody. Can we challenge it? We can and will. I've already filed a counterpetition claiming unlawful seizure and demanding a full competency hearing before an independent panel of physicians. Adrian's voice was hard. But the hearing won't happen for at least 3 days. Until then, we need to keep Eliza out of custody and out of sight. 3 days. Eliza felt the walls closing in again. I can't hide for 3 days. If I hide, I look guilty. I look like exactly what Helena claims I am. Unstable and irrational. If you don't hide, they'll take you, Adrian said bluntly. And once you're in Helena's custody, it's over. She'll have you in that asylum before the sun rises, and no court order will matter because you'll be locked behind walls with doctors she controls. Then what do I do? Spend the rest of my life running? No. You spend 3 days building a case so strong that when you walk into that hearing, there's no possible doubt about your competence. Adrian crossed to her, his dark eyes intense. Eliza, I need you to trust me, just for 3 more days. Let me protect you while we build your defense. I'm tired of being protected. I'm tired of hiding. I know, but dying on principle doesn't help anyone. Adrian's voice softened. Please, 3 days. Eliza wanted to argue. She wanted to march straight to the magistrate and demand justice. She wanted to stop running and stand her ground. But she'd seen the constables' faces, heard Lord Ashford's authority in his voice. She'd spent 3 years learning what happened to women who challenged powerful men. They lost. 3 days, she whispered. But after that, I fight back. After that, we fight back together. Adrian glanced at Catherine. Can you keep her safe here? Do I look like an amateur? Catherine bristled. I've been managing delicate situations since before you were born, nephew. Go handle your lawyers. I'll handle everything else. Adrian nodded, then hesitated. He looked at Eliza, and something passed between them, something complicated and unspoken. Don't let them take you, he said quietly. Whatever happens, don't let them take you. Then he was gone, disappearing into the night as quickly as he'd appeared. Catherine locked the door behind him and turned to Eliza with a sigh. Well, this is a disaster. I'm sorry, I've ruined everything. Nonsense, you've simply accelerated the timeline. Catherine began pulling more dust covers off furniture, revealing a sitting room that had once been beautiful. Adrian was going to confront Helena eventually. You just gave him a reason to do it spectacularly. Why is he doing this? Really? Eliza asked. He barely knows me. Yet he's risking his reputation, his political standing, everything. For what? Catherine paused, a dust cover bunched in her hands. You want the truth? Yes. I think you remind him of himself, of who he was when his father tried to break him. Catherine's expression was thoughtful. Adrian spent years being told he wasn't good enough, smart enough, strong enough to inherit. His father undermined him at every turn, publicly humiliated him, tried to force him into a life he didn't want. When Adrian finally fought back, it nearly destroyed their family. But it also made him who he is, someone who recognizes when power is being abused and refuses to look away. So I'm what, a project? A way for him to replay his own trauma? You're a person he believes deserves better than what you've been given. Whether there's more to it than that? Catherine smiled slightly. Well, that's between you and him. Before Eliza could respond, a sound outside made them both freeze. Footsteps. Multiple sets, heavy and purposeful. Catherine moved to the window and cursed softly. Constables. 4 of them, checking houses door to door. Already? They're thorough. I'll give them that. Catherine pulled Eliza away from the window. Upstairs. Now. There's a servant's stair that leads to the attic. Hide there and don't make a sound. What about you? I'm going to answer the door and tell them I'm an old woman spending the night in my late sister-in-law's house. Perfectly innocent. Catherine pushed her toward the stairs. Go! Eliza ran. She took the stairs 2 at a time, her sapphire gown whispering against the walls. The servant's stair was narrow and dark, smelling of old wood and dust. She climbed until she reached the attic, a cramped space under the eaves, filled with trunks and forgotten furniture. She wedged herself behind a tall wardrobe and tried to control her breathing. Below, she heard the knock at the door. Catherine's voice, elderly and querulous. Who's there at this ungodly hour? A man's voice, official and impatient. Constables, madam. We're looking for a young woman, Lady Eliza Ravenshire. We have reason to believe she may be hiding in this area. Ravenshire? I don't know any Ravenshire. I'm Lady Catherine Pembroke, and I'm staying in my late sister-in-law's house for the evening, alone. We'll need to search the premises, madam. You most certainly will not. Not without a proper warrant. I know my rights, young man. There was a pause, then, we have a warrant for Lady Eliza's arrest. For her arrest, perhaps, but not to search every house in London without cause. Now, I suggest you move along before I send for my nephew, who happens to be Duke Blackwood, and doesn't take kindly to constables harassing elderly ladies in the middle of the night. Another pause. Longer, this time. Our apologies, Lady Catherine. We didn't realize, obviously. Now leave before I decide to file a complaint about your conduct. Eliza heard footsteps retreating, then the door closing. She waited, barely breathing, while Catherine's footsteps moved through the house. Finally, Catherine's voice floated up the stairs. They're gone, but they'll be back with proper authorization. We need a new plan. Eliza climbed down from the attic on shaking legs. Catherine met her in the second-floor hallway, her face pale but composed. That was too close, the older woman said. They're checking every property associated with Adrian or his family. We can't stay here. Where do we go? Somewhere they'd never think to look. Catherine's eyes gleamed with sudden calculation. Somewhere so obvious it's invisible. I don't understand. You will. Catherine grabbed her arm. Get your cloak. We're leaving. Now? In the middle of the night? Now, before they come back with a real warrant and enough men to search every inch of this house. They left through the servants' entrance, Catherine moving with surprising stealth for a woman her age. A hackney cab waited at the corner, not Catherine's elegant carriage, but a common public conveyance that could blend into London's night traffic. Catherine gave the driver an address Eliza didn't recognize, and they rattled off into the darkness. Where are we going? Eliza asked. Covent Garden. The theater district? Among other things. Catherine's smile was mysterious. I have friends in low places, my dear. It's time you met them. The hackney took them deep into the heart of Covent Garden, where theaters blazed with light and crowds still filled the streets despite the late hour. They stopped in front of a building that looked like it might once have been a warehouse. Brick facade, narrow windows, a sign that read Mrs. Halloway's boarding house for respectable ladies. Catherine paid the driver and led Eliza inside. The interior was nothing like Eliza expected. Instead of the shabby gentility she'd imagined, the boarding house was warm and surprisingly comfortable. A fire crackled in the common room. Women of various ages sat reading or sewing, looking up with friendly curiosity as Catherine entered. An older woman with steel-gray hair appeared from a back room. Lady Catherine, what a surprise! Mrs. Halloway, I need a favor. Of course. Anything. Mrs. Halloway's eyes moved to Eliza, sharp and assessing. Who's your friend? Someone who needs to disappear for a few days, Mrs. Halloway's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Understanding, perhaps, or recognition of a familiar story. I see. Husband, father, stepmother, Catherine said. Ah, those can be worse. Mrs. Halloway gestured toward the stairs. Third floor, room 7. It's small but clean. No one will bother her there. What is this place? Eliza asked as Catherine led her upstairs. A boarding house for women who need somewhere safe to stay. Widows, unmarried women, girls who've left bad situations. Catherine's voice was matter-of-fact. Mrs. Halloway was once a lady's maid in a grand house. She saw how women with nowhere to go often ended up on the streets, or worse. So she created an alternative. They reached room 7. It was indeed small, just a narrow bed, a washstand, and a single chair. But it was clean, and the window had a lock. You'll be safe here, Catherine said. The women in this house know how to keep secrets, and constables don't waste time searching boarding houses full of working-class women. You're invisible here. When did you arrange this? I didn't, but I've known about Mrs. Halloway's establishment for years. I send her money occasionally, help her with legal difficulties. Catherine sat on the edge of the bed. Adrian isn't the only one who believes in helping people escape bad situations. Eliza felt tears prick her eyes. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when this is over and you're free. Catherine stood. I need to return to Ashford House before anyone realizes I'm gone. I'll come back tomorrow with news and supplies. Until then, stay in this room. Don't go out. Don't talk to anyone. Don't draw attention. 3 more days of hiding. 3 days of surviving. Catherine squeezed her hand. You've come too far to give up now. After Catherine left, Eliza sat in the narrow room and listened to the sounds of London at night, distant laughter, carriage wheels, the call of the watch announcing the hour. She was in the middle of the city, surrounded by people, and completely alone. But for the first time in 3 years, she was alone by choice. Not locked away, not erased. Hidden, yes, but not helpless. She pulled her father's letter from her pocket and read it again by candlelight. Remember that you are stronger than she could ever be, because you have something she doesn't. Integrity. I hope you're right, Father, she whispered to the empty room, because I'm about to test exactly how strong I am. The next morning, Eliza woke to find a newspaper had been slipped under her door. The headline made her blood run cold. Duke Blackwood accused of abduction. Missing heiress declared mentally unfit. The article was brutal. It painted Adrian as a rake who'd seduced a vulnerable young woman for her fortune. It described Eliza as mentally unstable, prone to delusions, and in desperate need of medical care. Dr. Whitmore was quoted extensively, describing her severe melancholia and detachment from reality. Lord Ashford had given an interview claiming he feared for her safety. Marianne was quoted as saying she'd tried to warn Eliza that the Duke's intentions weren't honorable, but that Eliza wasn't herself. Helena's statement was a masterpiece of false concern. My poor stepdaughter has been unwell for some time. We've tried everything to help her, but she became convinced that we were trying to harm her. It's heartbreaking. I only pray the Duke will do the right thing and return her to proper medical care before she comes to harm. The article ended with a notice that a formal competency hearing had been scheduled for 3 days hence, and that if Lady Eliza didn't appear, a warrant for her arrest would be issued. Eliza's hands shook so hard she dropped the newspaper. They were burying her. Not with silence this time, but with words, twisting her escape into proof of madness, her courage into delusion. A knock at the door made her jump. It's Mrs. Halloway. May I come in? Eliza opened the door. The boarding house proprietor entered with a breakfast tray and a sympathetic expression. I saw the paper, Mrs. Halloway said quietly. I'm guessing you're the missing heiress. There was no point lying. Yes. Thought you might be. Lady Catherine doesn't help just anyone. Mrs. Halloway set down the tray. Eat something. You look like you haven't had a proper meal in days. I can't eat, Aunt. They're destroying my reputation. By the time the hearing happens, everyone in London will believe I'm mad. Maybe. Or maybe people are smarter than you think. Mrs. Halloway poured tea with steady hands. I've lived in this city 40 years, and I've learned something about scandals. The louder someone protests, the more suspicious people get. Your stepmother is protesting very loudly. That doesn't help me in court. No, but it plants seeds of doubt. Mrs. Halloway met her eyes. You know what helps in court? Witnesses. People who can testify you're of sound mind. I don't have witnesses. I've been isolated for 3 years. You have this house full of women who've been watching you all morning through the crack in your door. Mrs. Halloway smiled slightly. You've been pacing, reading, thinking, acting exactly like a frightened but rational young woman, not like someone suffering from delusions. That's worth something. You testify for me? You don't even know me. I know your type. I've housed dozens of women running from guardians, husbands, fathers who claimed they were mad or hysterical or needed protecting. Mrs. Halloway's voice hardened. 9 times out of 10, those women were perfectly sane. They were just inconvenient. I'm good at recognizing the difference. Hope flickered in Eliza's chest. Would others here testify too? Some would. The ones who've been through similar ordeals. Mrs. Halloway stood. Eat your breakfast. Lady Catherine will be here this afternoon with the Duke's lawyers. You'll need your strength. She left, closing the door quietly behind her. Eliza forced herself to eat, though the food tasted like ashes. She was reading the newspaper article for the 3rd time, trying to find any angle she could use in her defense, when raised voices erupted downstairs. She froze, listening. Under orders from Lord Ashford to search these premises. A man's voice, official and aggressive. Mrs. Holloway's response was cold as ice. This is a private residence. You have no authority here without a warrant. We have reason to believe you're harboring a fugitive. Then produce your warrant or leave before I summon a magistrate of my own. Footsteps on the stairs. Heavy boots, climbing fast. Eliza's heart hammered against her ribs. They'd found her. Despite everything, despite Catherine's precautions, they'd found her. She looked around the tiny room for an escape and saw none. The window was 3 stories up. The door was the only exit. The footsteps reached her floor. She heard doors being thrown open, women protesting, Mrs. Holloway's voice rising in fury. Then her door burst open. A constable stood there, young, nervous, but determined. Lady Eliza Ravenshire, you need to come with me. No. The word came out stronger than she felt. I have orders. I don't care about your orders. I'm not going anywhere. The constable stepped into the room. Don't make this difficult, my lady. I'm just doing my job. Your job is to arrest innocent women because a corrupt lord tells you to? He flinched. The magistrate signed the order. That makes it legal. It makes it a piece of paper. It doesn't make it right. For a moment, doubt flickered across the young constable's face, but then another man appeared in the doorway, older, harder, with the eyes of someone who'd stopped questioning orders years ago. Enough talk, the older constable said. Take her. The young constable moved toward Eliza. She backed against the wall, her mind racing. If they took her now, it was over. Helena would have her in the asylum by nightfall, and no competency hearing would matter because she'd never make it to court. She had one chance. One desperate, dangerous chance. Before you arrest me, she said loudly, clearly, I want everyone in this house to hear what I have to say. You don't have the right. I have the right to speak. Or is that illegal now too? Eliza raised her voice so it carried down the stairwell. My name is Lady Eliza Ravenshire, daughter of Lord Edmund Ravenshire. 3 years ago, my stepmother, Countess Helena, began systematically isolating me from society. She intercepted my correspondence, dismissed my servants, and spread rumors that I was mentally unfit. She did this because I'm set to inherit half my father's fortune in 2 weeks, and she wants to prevent that by having me declared incompetent. Doors opened along the hallway. Women emerged, watching. That's enough, the older constable growled. It's not nearly enough. Eliza's voice shook, but didn't break. Dr. Cornelius Whitmore signed documents declaring me insane without ever examining me. Lord Ashford obtained custody orders in the middle of the night from a magistrate who never questioned whether they were legitimate. And now you're here to drag me back to a woman who's been planning to lock me in an asylum since the day my father died. She's delusional. I'm terrified, Eliza shot back. There's a difference. I'm scared because powerful people are trying to steal my inheritance and destroy my life. And they're using the law to do it because they know the law protects them, not me. The hallway had filled with women now, residents of the boarding house, servants, Mrs. Holloway at the front with her arms crossed. I have one question for you, Constable, Eliza said, looking at the younger man. Do I seem insane to you? Right now, in this moment, do I sound like someone who's detached from reality? The young constable's face was torn. I don't. Because if I'm truly mad, then arrest me. But if I'm not, if I'm just a woman fighting for her freedom against people who have more money and power than I do, then ask yourself what you're really doing here. The silence stretched out, painful and electric. Then Mrs. Holloway spoke. These young ladies are all witnesses to this conversation, Constable. If you arrest Lady Eliza, you're doing it in front of 30 women who'll testify that she was calm, rational, and coherent. Women who'll swear in court that she showed no signs of mental incompetence. Are you prepared for that? The older constable's face went red. This is obstruction. This is justice, Mrs. Holloway cut him off. Real justice, not the kind bought by wealthy families with connections. You want to arrest her? Fine, but you'll do it in front of witnesses who'll make sure everyone knows exactly what happened here. The 2 constables looked at each other. The younger one's hand had dropped away from Eliza's arm. We should report back, he said quietly. Get further instructions. The older constable glared at him. We have our orders. Oh, we have questionable orders based on questionable documentation, and we're about to arrest a woman who doesn't seem incompetent in front of 30 witnesses who'll testify against us. The young constable's voice was firmer now. Sir, I think we should report back. For a long, terrible moment, Eliza thought the older constable would ignore him. But then he cursed under his breath and turned toward the stairs. This isn't over, he snarled at Eliza. I know, she said quietly. But it's not over for you either. Everyone here knows your name now. Everyone here will remember what you tried to do. The constables left, their footsteps heavy and angry on the stairs. The moment they were gone, Eliza's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the bed, shaking violently. Mrs. Halloway was beside her in an instant. Breathe, child. You're safe, for now. They'll come back, with more men, more authority. Probably, but you bought yourself time. Mrs. Halloway's voice was proud. And you showed every woman in this house that it's possible to stand up to power. That matters more than you know. The other women crowded into the small room, offering support, water, soft words of encouragement. Eliza looked at their faces. Working women, poor women, women the world had tried to make invisible, and realized that in trying to hide, she'd found an army. An hour later, Catherine arrived with Adrian and a man introduced as Mr. Pembert, the barrister who would represent Eliza at the competency hearing. We heard what happened, Adrian said, his face tight with controlled fury. That was incredibly brave, and incredibly dangerous. It was desperate, Eliza corrected. They were going to take me. They'll try again. Mr. Pembert was a thin, severe man with sharp eyes. Lord Ashford is petitioning for an immediate custody order that supersedes the hearing. If he gets it, you'll be remanded to family care regardless of the evidence. Can he do that? He's trying. I'm filing counter motions, but Pembert hesitated. But what? Catherine demanded. But he has the advantage. The legal presumption is that family knows best. Unless we can prove actual malice on Helena's part, the court will likely side with returning you to her custody pending the hearing. We have proof of malice, Adrian said. Financial records. Testimony from Blackthorn Hall servants. Pemberton's documentation of intercepted correspondence. All circumstantial. What we need is direct evidence of intent to harm. Pembert looked at Eliza. Do you have anything concrete? A letter from Helena? A witness to threats? Anything that proves she planned to imprison you unlawfully? Eliza thought of Marianne's warning, the asylum papers, the years of isolation. But it was all hearsay, implications, nothing concrete. No, she whispered. I don't have proof. Just my word against hers. Then I'll be honest with you, Lady Eliza. The hearing is 2 days away, and we're walking into it with a weak case. Helena has doctors, financial documentation showing she's managed the estate responsibly, and witnesses who will testify you've been erratic. You have, he gestured vaguely, sympathetic testimony from boarding house residents and the Duke's patronage. That's not enough, Adrian said flatly. No, it's not. Silence fell over the small room. Then Eliza stood. What if I had a confession? Everyone turned to look at her. What kind of confession? Pembert asked. Helena's. In her own words, admitting what she's done. Eliza's mind was racing, pieces clicking together. Marianne said Helena keeps records in her study at Blackthorn Hall, correspondence with Dr. Whitmore, financial documents showing the estate fraud, maybe even the asylum papers. If I could get those documents. You want to break into Blackthorn Hall? Adrian stared at her. Eliza, that's insane. Is it? Or is it the only way to get the proof we need? She looked at Pembert. If I had Helena's own documentation, would that be enough? If it's authenticated and substantial, yes. It could be enough to not only win the hearing, but bring criminal charges against the Countess. Pembert's expression was cautious. But obtaining evidence through theft could invalidate it. And if I'm caught, I'm no worse off than I am now. Eliza turned to Adrian. You said we had 2 days. I say we use them. To commit a crime that could destroy any remaining credibility you have. Adrian shook his head. No, absolutely not. Then what's your alternative? Wait for the hearing and hope the judge believes me over a countess with powerful connections? I'll find another way. There is no other way. Eliza's voice rose. You know there isn't. We can file motions and hire lawyers and hope for the best, but the system is designed to protect people like Helena. The only way to beat her is to use her own weapons against her. Catherine spoke quietly. She's right, Adrian. Aunt Catherine. She's right, Catherine repeated. I've watched you try to fight corruption with propriety for years. Sometimes it works. Often, it doesn't. If Eliza can get hard evidence of Helena's crimes, it changes everything. And if she's caught, it destroys everything. Adrian looked at Eliza, his eyes desperate. You're asking me to let you walk into a trap. I'm asking you to trust me to do what's necessary. Eliza moved closer, her voice softening. Adrian, you told me 3 years ago your father tried to control your life, and you fought back, even though it was terrifying. This is my fight. Let me fight it. The room fell silent. Adrian's face was a mask of conflict, duty warring with protection, logic fighting emotion. Finally, he closed his eyes. If we do this, we do it carefully, professionally, with backup and an escape plan. We? Eliza asked. Adrian opened his eyes, and they were fierce. You think I'm letting you break into that house alone? Not a chance. Pember cleared his throat. For the record, I'm strongly advising against this. As your barrister, I must insist. Your objection is noted, Catherine cut him off. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a heist to plan. The older woman's eyes gleamed with something that looked almost like joy. What? Adrian stared at her. Oh, don't look so shocked, nephew. I didn't spend 60 years in London society by playing it safe. Catherine pulled out a piece of paper and began sketching. Now, let's discuss the layout of Blackthorn Hall and exactly how we're going to rob it blind. Catherine's sketch of Blackthorn Hall spread across the small table like a battle map, which was exactly what it was. The study is here, East Wing, second floor, she said, tapping the paper with her pencil. Helena keeps all her private correspondence there. If there's evidence, that's where it'll be. How do you know the layout? Eliza asked. I visited once, years ago, for your father's birthday celebration. I have an excellent memory for architecture. Catherine drew another line. The servants' entrance is here, kitchen access here. There are 2 staircases. The main one Helena will have watched, and the servants' stair that's likely unguarded. Adrian leaned over the sketch, his jaw tight. Security? Minimal, normally, but now? She'll have the place locked down tighter than the Tower of London. Catherine looked at Eliza. How many servants are still loyal to you? Molly, the kitchen maid. Maybe Mrs. Brennan, the cook. A few others who knew my father. Eliza's mind raced through the staff. But I can't ask them to risk their positions for me. You won't have to, I will. Catherine's smile was sharp. Servants gossip, and I know how to make gossip work for us. If I send word through the right channels that I'm concerned about Helena's treatment of staff, by tomorrow morning every maid in that house will be watching for an opportunity to help. That's still not enough to get Eliza inside, Adrian said. The moment Helena sees her, Helena won't see her, because Helena won't be there. Catherine's eyes gleamed. Tomorrow night is the Pemberton Ball. Every important family in the county will attend. Helena can't afford to miss it, not when she's fighting a publicity battle. She'll need to be seen, to spread her version of events, to rally her allies. She'll leave Marianne and Lord Ashford to guard the house, Eliza said. Lord Ashford is expected at his club tomorrow night. He never misses the monthly dinner. Catherine checked her notes. That leaves Marianne. And from what you've told me, she's not exactly committed to her mother's cause. Adrian shook his head. This is still too risky, too many variables. All plans are risky. This one is just honest about it. Catherine met his eyes. Adrian, if you have a better option, present it. Otherwise, stop trying to protect everyone and let us do what needs to be done. The two of them stared at each other in a battle of wills that Eliza suspected had been playing out for decades. Finally, Adrian exhaled sharply. Fine, but we do this my way, with professionals. Professionals? Eliza blinked. I know people who specialize in discreet acquisition of information, private investigators, former intelligence operatives. Adrian's voice was clipped, controlled. If we're breaking into Blackthorn Hall, we're doing it with experts who know how to get in and out without leaving evidence. How long will it take to arrange? I can have someone here by morning. Adrian looked at Eliza. But understand this. If we're caught, if anything goes wrong, there's no coming back from this. You'll be branded a criminal. Everything we've built will collapse. It's already collapsed, Eliza said quietly. We're just deciding whether to surrender or fight. Adrian held her gaze for a long moment. Then he stood. I'll send word to my contact. We meet tomorrow at dawn to plan the operation. He left before anyone could respond, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. Catherine watched him go with a knowing expression. He's terrified, you know. Of failure? Of losing you. Catherine began gathering her papers. Adrian doesn't let people in easily. When he does, he protects them with everything he has. It makes him a fierce ally and an absolute nightmare when he's worried. We barely know each other. Time isn't what creates connection. Experience is. Catherine squeezed Eliza's shoulder. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be difficult. After Catherine left, Eliza lay awake in the narrow bed, listening to the sounds of the boarding house settling for the night. Women's voices drifted through thin walls, conversations, laughter, the occasional sob quickly muffled. Each woman here had her own story of survival, her own battle against circumstances that tried to break her. Eliza wasn't alone. She'd never been alone. She'd just been made to feel that way. Somewhere in London, Helena was probably sleeping peacefully, confident that her power and connections would prevail, that the law would protect her, as it always had, that a girl with no resources and a tarnished reputation could never threaten her carefully constructed empire. Tomorrow, Eliza was going to prove her wrong. Dawn came cold and gray. Eliza dressed in the plainest clothes Mrs. Halloway could find, a simple brown dress that could belong to any working woman, a dark cloak, sturdy boots. She tied her hair back severely and looked at herself in the small mirror. She looked like a servant, like someone invisible, perfect. Adrian arrived at 7 with a man he introduced only as Mr. Finch. Finch was in his 40s, unremarkable in every way, medium height, medium build, the kind of face that disappeared in a crowd, but his eyes were sharp, calculating, and completely cold. Lady Eliza, Finch's voice was soft and precise. His Grace tells me you need to access a private study and a guarded residence without being detected. Is that accurate? Yes. Purpose of the intrusion? Document retrieval, personal correspondence, financial records, anything that proves criminal intent. Finch nodded, processing. Time constraint? 2 days. There's a legal hearing and we need the evidence before then. Acceptable. Finch pulled out a small notebook. I'll need detailed information about the residence layout, staff schedules, security measures, and the location of the target documents. For the next 3 hours, they planned. Catherine provided her sketch and memory. Eliza described every room she could remember, every routine, every habit of the household. Adrian contributed what his investigators had learned about current security. Finch took it all in with mechanical efficiency, asking sharp questions, identifying weaknesses, constructing a plan that sounded simultaneously impossible and inevitable. The Pemberton ball starts at 8, Finch said finally. The Countess will need to arrive by past. That gives us a window from 9 o'clock until approximately midnight. 3 hours. What if she comes home early? Eliza asked. Then we abort and try again. But we won't need to try again because we'll be done in 90 minutes. Finch's confidence was absolute. I'll enter through the kitchen entrance posing as a wine merchant's assistant making a late delivery. Lady Eliza will accompany me as my apprentice. We'll move through the servants' areas to the main house, access the study, retrieve the documents, and exit the same way. That's it? That's the plan? Simplicity is security. Complicated plans create complications. Finch looked at her with those cold, assessing eyes. Your role is to identify the correct documents quickly. Can you do that? Eliza thought of the 3 years she'd spent watching, learning, memorizing everything about Helena's routines. Yes. Good. We leave at 7 tomorrow evening. After Finch departed, Eliza found herself alone with Adrian in Mrs. Halloway's parlor. He stood at the window, looking out at the gray London morning, his hands clasped behind his back. You don't have to come tomorrow, he said without turning. Finch could identify the documents from descriptions. You could stay here, stay safe. We both know that's not true. Helena's handwriting, her seals, the specific documents, I'm the only one who knows what to look for. Then let me come with you. Not Finch. Me. You're a duke. You'd be recognized instantly. So would you if anyone looks closely enough. Adrian finally turned and his face was drawn with worry. Eliza, I'm asking you to reconsider. Not because I doubt you, but because if this goes wrong, you'll pay the price while I walk away with my title intact. That's not justice. No, it's reality. People like you get second chances. People like me get locked away. Eliza crossed to him, surprised by her own boldness. That's exactly why I have to do this. Because if I don't fight for myself, no one else will. I'm fighting for you. I know, and I'm grateful. But your fight isn't the same as mine. She took his hand, feeling the warmth of it, the strength. You're fighting to protect me. I'm fighting to exist. There's a difference. Adrian's fingers tightened around hers. I can't lose you. The words hung between them, raw and unexpected. You don't have me to lose, Eliza said softly. We barely know each other. Don't we? Adrian's dark eyes searched her face. I know you're brave enough to escape a prison most people wouldn't even recognize as one. I know you're clever enough to see through society's pretenses. I know you read Milton and Bronte, that you pace when you're anxious, that you hide your fear behind sharp words because you learned long ago that showing vulnerability gets you hurt. Eliza felt her breath catch. Adrian, I know you, Eliza. Maybe not everything, but enough to know that losing you would matter. So please, be careful tomorrow. She wanted to promise. She wanted to tell him everything would be fine, that they'd get the evidence and win the hearing and live happily ever after like characters in the novels she loved. But she'd learned too much about the world to believe in easy endings. I'll do my best, she whispered. It was the only truth she could offer. The next day crawled past with agonizing slowness. Catherine came and went, reporting that Helena had indeed left for the Pemberton ball, dripping in jewels and righteous indignation. Lord Ashford was confirmed at his club. Marianne was alone at Blackthorn Hall with a skeleton staff. At 6 o'clock, Finch arrived with a cart full of wine crates and 2 sets of servants' livery. Put this on, he said, handing Eliza a simple black dress and white apron. Keep your head down, speak only if spoken to, and follow my lead exactly. Eliza changed quickly, her hands shaking. When she emerged, Finch studied her critically. Your posture is wrong. You stand like aristocracy. Servants curve their spines, lower their eyes. Try again. Eliza adjusted, rounding her shoulders, tilting her head down. Better. Remember, you're invisible. That's your weapon. They left at 7 sharp, the cart rattling through London streets toward Hertfordshire. Adrian had wanted to accompany them, but Finch had vetoed it. Too recognizable, too protective. He'll give us away. So it was just Eliza and this cold, efficient stranger rolling toward the house that had been her prison. They reached Blackthorn Hall as twilight deepened into night. Lights blazed in the windows, but fewer than Eliza remembered. The staff had been cut back, probably another one of Helena's cost-saving measures. Finch drove the cart directly to the kitchen entrance, bold as brass. A young footman emerged. Deliveries were supposed to come this morning. Apologies, sir, Finch said in a flawless working-class accent. There was a mix-up at the warehouse. The Countess's special order for the Pemberton ball. We just got it sorted. Mr. Davies sent us straight here to make sure it arrived in time. The footman frowned. The Countess is already at the ball, which is why we need to get these stored proper-like before she returns. She'll have our heads if the wine isn't at the right temperature. Finch gestured to Eliza. Come on, girl. Don't just stand there. Eliza grabbed a crate and followed him toward the kitchen entrance, her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone must hear it. The footman hesitated, then stepped aside. Make it quick. Mrs. Brennan doesn't like disruptions during dinner service. They entered the kitchen, and Eliza nearly gasped. This room had been her refuge as a child, warm and fragrant with baking bread. Now it felt cold, the staff reduced to a handful of tired workers. Mrs. Brennan stood at the massive stove, older and grayer than Eliza remembered. She glanced up as they entered, her eyes widening slightly. She'd recognized Eliza. Eliza held her breath, waiting for the shout, the alarm. Mrs. Brennan looked away deliberately. Wine storage is through there. Be quick about it. It was permission, silent, dangerous permission. Finch led Eliza through the kitchen to the storage room, then to the servants' stair. We have 90 minutes, he murmured. Move fast. Move quiet. They climbed the narrow stairs, every creak of wood making Eliza flinch. These stairs, she'd run up and down them as a child, playing hide-and-seek with servants who indulged the master's lonely daughter. The second floor was dark, lit only by a few candles in wall sconces. Finch moved like a shadow, and Eliza tried to match his silence. They reached the study door. Locked, of course. Finch produced a set of tools from his pocket and worked the lock with practiced ease. The click seemed impossibly loud in the quiet hallway. The door swung open. Helena's study was exactly as Eliza remembered. Dark wood paneling, a massive desk, shelves lined with ledgers and correspondence. The scent of her stepmother's perfume lingered in the air, making Eliza's stomach turn. You have 30 minutes, Finch said. Find what we need. Eliza moved to the desk, her hands shaking. The drawers were locked, but Finch opened them in seconds. Inside, she found exactly what she'd expected and worse than she'd feared. Letters from Dr. Whitmore detailing his diagnosis of Eliza's mental state, a diagnosis based entirely on Helena's descriptions without ever examining her. Financial records showing systematic embezzlement from the estate accounts. Correspondence with the asylum, including payment arrangements, and a request for maximum security confinement. And at the bottom of the drawer, a letter in Helena's own handwriting addressed to Lord Ashford. Eliza read it by candlelight, and her blood went cold. My dear brother, the Ravenshire girl continues to be problematic. She's begun asking questions about the accounts, about her father's will. I've increased her laudanum doses, but it's not enough. She's too clever, too stubborn. I need your assistance in finalizing the asylum arrangements. Doctor. Whitmore has provided the necessary documentation, but we'll need a magistrate willing to sign the commitment papers without excessive scrutiny. Can you recommend someone discreet? Once she's safely confined, I'll have full control of the estate. The marriage portion for Mary Ann can then proceed as planned, and we'll finally see a return on the investment we made in securing this family. Time is short. She turns 21 in 3 weeks, and once she has legal majority, our options become limited. We must act before then. Your devoted sister, Helena. Eliza's hands shook so violently she nearly dropped the letter. This was it. Proof of conspiracy, premeditation, criminal intent. Helena had written her own confession. Take everything, Finch said quietly. Every document in that drawer. Eliza gathered the papers with shaking hands, stuffing them into the satchel Finch provided. She was reaching for the last bundle when she heard voices in the hallway. She froze. Don't understand why Mother insisted I stay here instead of attending the ball, Mary Ann's voice, petulant and young. I'm old enough to... Another voice. Older, male, one of the footmen. It's not my place to question the Countess, miss. Well, I'm going to my room. Fetch me tea in an hour. Footsteps approaching. Close, too close. Finch grabbed Eliza and pulled her behind the heavy curtains just as the study door opened. Through the gap in the fabric, Eliza watched Mary Ann enter. Her stepsister looked tired, her perfect curls slightly disheveled, her expression troubled. Mary Ann walked to the desk and stood there for a long moment, just staring at it. Then she pulled open a drawer, a different one from where Eliza had been searching, and removed a small box. Inside was a miniature portrait of Eliza's mother. Mary Ann held it carefully, her fingers tracing the painted face. I'm sorry, she whispered to the portrait. I'm sorry we did this to your daughter. Eliza's throat tightened. Mary Ann knew. She'd always known. Mary Ann replaced the portrait, closed the drawer, and left the study without looking back. Finch waited a full minute before moving. We need to go, now. They slipped from the study and down the servant's stair, moving fast. But as they reached the second-floor landing, shouting erupted from below. Breach in the wine storage. Someone's been in the cellars. Check the house. Now! Finch cursed under his breath. Someone discovered our cart. We're compromised. What do? We run. They ran. Down the stairs, through corridors Eliza had walked 1,000 times as a child, now racing through them like a thief. Footsteps pounded behind them. Voices shouted for them to stop. They burst into the kitchen, and Mrs. Brennan was there, her face pale but determined. East door, she hissed. Through the garden. Go. They ran through the scullery and out into the night. The east gardens, Eliza's gardens, where she'd read and hidden and dreamed of escape, stretched before them in darkness. Behind them, the house erupted in chaos. Lanterns bobbed in windows. Dogs began barking. "The wall!" Eliza gasped. "There's a section that's crumbling, near the old oak." She led Finch through the darkness, muscle memory guiding her to the spot where she'd discovered years ago that the estate wall had weakened. They scrambled over it, dropping into the lane beyond just as search parties spilled into the garden. Finch had a horse waiting. He pulled Eliza up behind him, and they rode hard into the night, not slowing until the lights of Blackthorn Hall had disappeared behind them. Only then did Eliza realize she was crying, great, gasping sobs of relief and terror and triumph. "Did we get it?" Finch asked, his voice steady despite their wild flight. "Did you find what you needed?" Eliza clutched the satchel to her chest, feeling the weight of the documents inside. "Yes," she whispered. "We got it all." They returned to London as dawn broke, the city slowly waking around them. Finch delivered Eliza to the boarding house, then disappeared to report to Adrian. Mrs. Halloway took one look at Eliza's disheveled state and ushered her inside without questions. "Bath first, then food. Then you can tell me whether it was worth it." Eliza soaked in hot water, washing away the fear and the dirt and the smell of Blackthorn Hall. When she emerged, Catherine and Adrian were waiting in the parlor. "Tell me," Adrian demanded, his face haggard. He looked like he hadn't slept all night. Eliza handed him the satchel. He pulled out the documents one by one, his expression growing darker with each page. When he reached Helena's letter to Lord Ashford, his hands clenched so hard the paper crumpled. "This is enough," he said quietly. "This is more than enough. This is a criminal conspiracy." "Will the court accept it?" Eliza asked. "The court will have no choice." Adrian looked at Catherine. "Get Pembert here immediately. We need these documents authenticated and filed before Helena realizes they're missing." Catherine left at a run, moving faster than Eliza had ever seen her. Adrian turned to Eliza, and suddenly his arms were around her, pulling her close in an embrace that was fierce and desperate and utterly improper. "Don't ever do that again," he said into her hair. "Don't ever risk yourself like that again." "I thought you said it was necessary." "It was. I still hated every second of it." He pulled back enough to look at her, his dark eyes blazing. "When Finch reported that you'd been discovered, that there were search parties, Eliza, I nearly went mad. But we made it. We're safe. This time. But what about next time? What about—" He stopped, his jaw working. "I can't keep watching you throw yourself into danger." "Then don't watch. Trust me to survive instead." Something shifted in his expression. "You're right. You've been surviving alone for years. You don't need me to protect you." "I didn't say that." Eliza reached up, touching his face where the bruise from Lord Ashford's blow had faded to yellow. "I said trust me. There's a difference between trusting someone and protecting them. I'm not sure I know the difference anymore." "Then learn." She smiled, exhausted and terrified and somehow exhilarated. "We have 2 days until the hearing. Teach yourself to trust me in that time." Adrian's laugh was rough and unexpected. 2 days. As if that's enough time for anything. It was enough time to turn my entire life upside down. I think it's enough time for you to learn one simple lesson. He kissed her then, sudden and desperate and completely improper, there in Mrs. Halloway's parlor with the morning light streaming through the windows. Eliza kissed him back, tasting fear and hope, and the dangerous promise of something she didn't dare name yet. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. 2 days, he repeated. Then we win this. Or we lose everything. No. His voice was steel. We don't lose. I won't allow it. Pembert arrived within the hour, took one look at the documents, and actually smiled, a thin, sharp expression that made him look like a predator scenting blood. This changes everything, he said, spreading the papers across the table. This isn't just evidence for a competency hearing. This is grounds for criminal prosecution, fraud, conspiracy to commit unlawful imprisonment, embezzlement. Helena Ashworth is finished. But will the hearing accept it? Eliza pressed. The documents were obtained through unofficial means. The documents were recovered from your family estate by you, the rightful heir. Nothing illegal about that. Pembert's smile widened. Lady Eliza, you've just handed me the strongest case I've had in 20 years. When we walk into that hearing tomorrow, we're not defending your competency. We're destroying your stepmother's credibility. Tomorrow? Adrian looked up sharply. The hearing isn't until the day after. It was, but Lord Ashford filed an emergency motion this morning for immediate adjudication. The magistrate agreed. Pembert's expression turned serious. They're trying to rush this through before we can properly prepare. The hearing is set for 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Eliza felt her stomach drop. That's less than 24 hours. Yes, which is why we need to work through the night. I'll need your testimony, documented timeline of Helena's actions, witness statements from anyone who can corroborate the isolation and abuse. Pembert was already making notes. Lady Catherine, can you secure the servants from Blackthorn Hall, the ones who helped last night? Mrs. Brennan won't testify. She can't risk her position. Catherine's voice was thoughtful. But Molly might. And there are others, former staff who were dismissed when Helena took control. They have no reason to protect her. Get them. I want every person who witnessed Helena's treatment of Lady Eliza ready to testify. Pembert looked at Eliza. This is going to be brutal. Helena's lawyers will attack your character, your stability, your motives. They'll claim you're a vengeful daughter trying to destroy your stepmother's reputation. Are you prepared for that? Eliza thought of the 3 years in silence, the slow erasure, the laudanum doses Mrs. Brennan had mentioned in Helena's letter, doses Eliza had unknowingly taken, thinking they were medicine. She thought of her father's letter, still carried in her pocket, worn soft from handling. I'm prepared, she said. Let them come. They worked through the night. Pembert constructed the case with surgical precision, anticipating every argument Helena's lawyers might make and preparing counter-evidence. Catherine disappeared and returned with 3 former Blackthorn Hall servants, all of whom had been dismissed after questioning Helena's treatment of Eliza. Adrian paced, contributed when needed, and watched Eliza with an intensity that made her heart race. By dawn, they had a case. By noon, they had armor. At 1 o'clock, Eliza, dressed in the sapphire gown Madame Laurent had made, her hair arranged elegantly by Catherine's lady's maid. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked powerful. She looked dangerous. She looked free. Ready? Adrian stood in the doorway, magnificent in his formal attire, every inch the Duke. No, Eliza said honestly, but I'm going anyway. They arrived at the courthouse at 1:45. A crowd had gathered, scandal seekers, journalists, society matrons who'd come to watch the spectacle. Helena was already there, dressed in mourning black despite no recent deaths, playing the grieving stepmother to perfection. Lord Ashford stood beside her, radiating authority. Dr. Whitmore hovered nearby, clutching his medical bag like a shield. When Helena saw Eliza, her mask slipped for just a moment. Eliza saw the calculation in her eyes, the brief flash of fear. Good. She should be afraid. They entered the courtroom, and Eliza felt the weight of 100 watching eyes. This was it, the moment everything hinged on. The magistrate entered, a severe-looking man in his 60s with the bearing of someone who'd spent a lifetime making difficult decisions. We're here to determine the competency of Lady Eliza Ravenshire and the validity of guardianship claims made by Countess Helena Ashworth, he announced. Mr. Pembert, you represent Lady Eliza. I do, Your Honor. And Mr. Crawford represents the Countess? A sleek, expensive-looking lawyer stood. Yes, Your Honor? Then let's proceed. Mr. Crawford, present your case. What followed was exactly as brutal as Pembert had warned. Crawford painted Eliza as a delusional young woman, corrupted by grief, unstable, unable to manage her own affairs. He called Dr. Whitmore, who testified about her severe melancholia and detachment from reality. He called servants who swore they'd seen her talking to herself, refusing food, displaying erratic behavior. He called Lord Ashford, who testified with grave authority about his sister's devoted care for her troubled stepdaughter. Helena herself took the stand, tears streaming down her face, describing her heartbreak at watching Eliza deteriorate despite her best efforts to help. It was a masterful performance. Eliza felt the courtroom turning against her, felt the weight of their judgment. Then Pembert stood. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence that fundamentally contradicts everything we've just heard. He laid out the documents one by one. Helena's letter to Lord Ashford, the financial records showing embezzlement, the asylum papers prepared before any competency evaluation. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Crawford shot to his feet. Your Honor, these documents were obtained illegally. These documents were recovered by Lady Eliza from her own family estate. Pembert cut him off. She had every right to access her father's study and her stepmother's correspondence regarding her own confinement. The magistrate held up a hand for silence. I'll review these documents myself. He read Helena's letter. His expression darkened with every line. When he looked up, his eyes went straight to Helena. Countess Ashworth, did you write this letter? Helena's face had gone white. That is, it's taken out of context. Did you write this letter? Yes, but... And did you, as this letter suggests, increase Lady Eliza's laudanum doses without medical supervision to make her more manageable? The courtroom fell silent. Helena's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Answer the question, Countess. I was trying to help her. By drugging her? By planning her unlawful confinement? By embezzling from her inheritance? The magistrate's voice rose. Dr. Whitmore, you testified that you examined Lady Eliza and found her mentally incompetent. When did this examination occur? Whitmore stammered. Based on reports from the Countess. So you never actually examined her. You diagnosed a young woman with severe mental illness based solely on the testimony of her stepmother, who, as these documents prove, had financial motivation to have her declared incompetent. The magistrate looked disgusted. This is the most egregious abuse of medical authority I've encountered in 30 years on the bench. He turned to Eliza. Lady Eliza, would you approach the bench? Eliza stood on shaking legs and walked forward. The magistrate studied her with sharp, assessing eyes. You've been through an ordeal, he said quietly. Not the mental illness your stepmother claimed, but a different kind of torture, isolation, manipulation, systematic erasure of your identity and rights. He paused. How are you managing? It was such an unexpected question, so human after all the legal formality, that Eliza felt tears prick her eyes. I'm surviving, Your Honor. With help. From Duke Blackwood. From many people. The Duke, yes, but also from women I met in a boarding house who'd survived similar ordeals. From servants who risked their positions to help me. From people who believed I deserved better than what I'd been given. The magistrate nodded slowly. Then he turned to the courtroom. I find Lady Eliza Ravenshire to be of completely sound mind and fully competent to manage her own affairs. Furthermore, I find that Countess Helena Ashworth engaged in a criminal conspiracy to unlawfully imprison her stepdaughter and defraud her of her inheritance. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I'm removing the Countess as guardian effective immediately and referring this matter to the Crown Prosecutor for criminal investigation. Lady Eliza, you are free to claim your inheritance and your life. The magistrate's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry for what you endured. This court failed you, but it's correcting that failure now. He brought down his gavel. The sound echoed through the courtroom like thunder. For a moment, Eliza couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then Adrian was there, pulling her into his arms, and Catherine was hugging them both, and Pembert was grinning like he'd just won the case of the century. Which he had. Across the courtroom, Helena sat frozen, her perfect mask shattered. Lord Ashford was already moving toward the exit, abandoning his sister to her fate. Dr. Whitmore looked like he might vomit. Marianne sat alone in the gallery, tears streaming down her face. When she caught Eliza's eye, she mouthed 2 words. Thank you. Eliza nodded. Some debts couldn't be paid with forgiveness, but they could be acknowledged. Outside the courthouse, journalists swarmed, shouting questions. Adrian shielded Eliza as they pushed through to the waiting carriage, but she stopped on the steps. Lady Eliza, what will you do now? She looked at the crowd, at the faces eager for scandal and drama, and the next sensational headline. I'm gonna live, she said clearly. For the first time in 3 years, I'm going to actually live. Then she climbed into the carriage beside Adrian, and they rode away from the courthouse toward a future that was finally, terrifyingly, beautifully hers to choose. The carriage rolled through London streets, but Eliza barely saw the passing buildings, the afternoon crowds, the ordinary life flowing around them. Her hands were still shaking, adrenaline and triumph and disbelief coursing through her veins in equal measure. "You're free," Adrian said quietly, as if testing the words. "It's over." "Is it?" Eliza looked at him, then at Catherine sitting across from them. "Helena will appeal?" "Lord Ashford has connections. The scandal sheets will turn this into entertainment for weeks." "Let them." Catherine's smile was fierce. "You won, darling. Not just the hearing, you won everything. Your freedom, your inheritance, your reputation. Helena is finished. By tomorrow, every drawing room in London will be discussing her criminal conspiracy. Lord Ashford can't touch you without destroying himself further. And the scandal sheets?" She laughed. "They'll make you a heroine, the brave heiress who escaped her wicked stepmother. It's perfect." "It doesn't feel perfect. It feels terrifying." "That's because you spent 3 years learning to be invisible," Adrian said, his hand finding hers. "Now you have to learn to exist again. That's always terrifying." The carriage arrived at Ashford House, where servants lined the entrance, their faces bright with barely contained excitement. Word had traveled fast. "Lady Eliza!" Mrs. Pemberton, the head housekeeper, actually curtsied. "Welcome home, my lady." Home. The word caught in Eliza's throat. This wasn't home, it was Adrian's house. But the warmth in the servants' faces, the genuine welcome, felt more like home than Blackthorn Hall had in years. Inside, champagne appeared as if by magic. Catherine poured 3 glasses, her eyes gleaming. "To Lady Eliza Ravenshire," she announced, "who taught us all that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's being terrified and fighting anyway." They drank, and Eliza felt the bubbles burn down her throat, warming her from the inside. "What happens now?" she asked. "Practically, I mean. Helena controlled everything, the accounts, the estate management, the staff. I don't even know how much money I actually have." "Pembert is already meeting with your father's former solicitors," Adrian said. "Within the week, you'll have a complete accounting. But based on the records we recovered, you're quite wealthy. The Ravenshire estate is substantial, and most of it has been preserved despite Helena's embezzlement." "Most of it?" "She took approximately £15,000 over 3 years. It's a fortune to most people, but barely a fraction of the total estate." Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact. "You're worth somewhere around £200,000, Eliza, plus the properties, investments, and holdings." Eliza set down her glass before she dropped it. £200,000. She'd known her father was wealthy, but the actual number was staggering. "That much?" "Your father was a very successful investor. He left you well provided for." Catherine refilled her glass. "Which means you have options now, real options. You could restore Blackthorn Hall, purchase a townhouse in London, travel, invest, whatever you choose." Whatever she chose. The concept felt foreign and thrilling and absolutely overwhelming. "I need time to think," Eliza said. "I've spent 3 years having every choice taken away. Now I have too many." "Take all the time you need," Adrian said. "You're under no obligation to decide anything immediately." But even as he said it, Eliza saw the question in his eyes, the unspoken hope, the fear that, now that she was free, she might choose to leave. She didn't know how to answer a question he hadn't asked. The next 3 days were chaos. The scandal sheets, as Catherine had predicted, turned Eliza's story into the sensation of the season. Headlines screamed about the imprisoned heiress and the wicked countess. Artists' renderings of the courtroom scene appeared in every paper. One particularly dramatic illustration showed Eliza standing defiant while Helena cowered. Nothing like the actual events, but compelling nonetheless. Letters arrived by the dozen. Invitations to balls, dinners, salons. Apologies from families who'd believed Helena's lies about Eliza's health. Proposals from fortune hunters. Threats from Helena's remaining allies. Eliza read them all in stunned silence. "You're famous," Catherine observed, sorting through the latest pile. "The tragic heroine restored to her rightful place. Society loves a redemption story." "I don't feel redeemed. I feel exposed." "That's the price of winning publicly. Your privacy is gone, but your power is real. Catherine set aside a particularly effusive letter from the Duchess of Somerset. The question is what you do with that power. Before Eliza could respond, Adrian appeared in the doorway of the morning room, his expression serious. Eliza, there's someone here to see you, Marianne. Eliza's chest tightened. She hadn't seen her stepsister since the hearing, when Marianne had mouthed those 2 words across the courtroom. Should I receive her? That's entirely your choice, but she's alone and she looks desperate. Eliza stood. Show her in. Marianne entered moments later, and Eliza was shocked by how diminished she looked. The golden girl who'd once glided through Blackthorn Hall in designer gowns now wore a simple dress, her hair arranged plainly, her face drawn with exhaustion and shame. Thank you for seeing me, Marianne said quietly. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either. Eliza gestured to a chair. What do you want, Marianne? To apologize. Properly, not like before. Marianne sat on the edge of the chair, her hands clenched together. I stood by while my mother hurt you. I benefited from your suffering. I was complicit in everything she did, and I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, but I need you to hear it. Eliza studied her stepsister. She looked for deception, manipulation, hidden motives, but all she saw was genuine remorse. Why did you do it? Eliza asked. You knew what she was. You warned me at the Hartwick reception. Why didn't you help me sooner? Because I was afraid. Marianne's voice cracked. My mother she's terrifying when you cross her. I saw what she did to you, and I was scared she'd do the same to me if I didn't obey. So I stayed quiet. I played the perfect daughter. I let her use me as a weapon against you. You did more than stay quiet. You told the scandal sheets I'd warned you about Adrian's intentions. You backed up her lies. I know, and I hate myself for it. Tears spilled down Marianne's cheeks. I was 18 and stupid and so desperate for her approval that I'd do anything. But watching you in that courtroom, watching you stand up to her, prove her wrong, fight for yourself when everyone said you couldn't. Eliza, you were braver in 1 hour than I've been in my entire life. Eliza felt something loosen in her chest. Not forgiveness, exactly, but understanding. What will you do now? She asked. Helena's facing criminal charges. She'll likely go to prison. I know. Lord Ashford has disowned her. All her society friends have abandoned her. She has nothing left except a daughter who finally found the courage to say no. Marianne wiped her eyes. I'm leaving London. I have an aunt in Bath who's offered to take me in. I'll live quietly, maybe find work as a governess or companion. I can't undo what I did, but I can stop being the person who did it. Marianne, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and that watching you win gave me the courage to stop being my mother's puppet. Marianne stood. I hope you find happiness, Eliza. You've earned it more than anyone I know. She turned to leave. Wait, Eliza said. Marianne stopped, not looking back. You were 18 and afraid. I understand that better than you think. Eliza moved closer. I'm not ready to forgive you. Maybe I never will be. But I don't hate you either. You made terrible choices, but you're trying to make better ones now. That matters. Marianne turned, her face streaked with tears. Does it? Yes. Eliza pulled a card from the writing desk and scribbled an address. This is Mrs. Halloway's boarding house in Covent Garden. If Bath doesn't work out, if you need a safe place, go there. Tell her I sent you. Marianne stared at the card like it was a lifeline. Why would you help me? Because someone helped me when I needed it. Maybe it's time to pass that forward. Eliza met her stepsister's eyes. We're not friends, Marianne. We may never be. But we're both women trying to survive in a world that wants to control us. That's worth something. Marianne clutched the card to her chest. Thank you. After she left, Eliza stood at the window, watching her stepsister's retreating figure disappear into London's crowded streets. That was kind, Adrian said from the doorway. That was strategic. If Marianne rebuilds her life, she has no reason to help Helena appeal the ruling. Eliza smiled slightly. But it was also kind. She's not her mother. No, she's not. Adrian crossed to stand beside her. Eliza, there's something we need to discuss. That sounds ominous. Not ominous, just important. Adrian took a breath. Your birthday is in 4 days. You'll turn 21, gain full legal control of your inheritance, and become entirely independent. I know. Which means you don't need my protection anymore. You don't need to stay here. His voice was carefully neutral. You're free to go wherever you choose. Eliza turned to face him fully. Is that what you want? For me to leave? Want? No. Adrian's mask cracked, showing the vulnerability beneath. But what I want isn't the point. You've spent 3 years trapped. The last thing you need is another man trying to control your choices. You're not controlling my choices. You're just afraid I'll choose to leave. Yes, he admitted. I am. Why does it matter so much to you? What am I to you, Adrian? The question that had been building for weeks finally escaped. Am I a project? A redemption for your own past? A woman you feel obligated to protect? You're the person who reminded me why I started fighting in the first place. Adrian's voice was raw. After my father died, I spent years using my power to fix systems, change laws, help people from a distance. It was safe, clinical, emotionally manageable. Then I met you, and suddenly everything became personal again. That's not an answer, isn't it? He stepped closer, his dark eyes intense. Eliza, you're brilliant and brave and fierce enough to break into your own house to steal evidence against criminals. You read Milton and Bronte, you challenge authority, you refuse to be invisible. You're everything I didn't know I was looking for until you appeared in that garden. So I'm what? Your intellectual match? Your perfect complement? You're the woman I'm in love with, Adrian said simply. And I have absolutely no right to be because you barely know me. And you've just escaped one controlling situation, and the last thing you need is a duke declaring his feelings when you're still figuring out who you want to be. But you asked what you are to me, and that's the truth. Eliza's breath caught. Love. He'd said love. When did you know? She whispered. Probably the moment you quoted Paradise Lost in my face and looked at me like I was an idiot for not understanding the reference. Adrian smiled slightly. Definitely when you stood in that courtroom and refused to let them make you small, you were magnificent. I was terrified. You were both. That's what made it magnificent. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face gently. I love you, Eliza. And I need you to know that before you make any decisions about your future. Because whatever you choose, staying, leaving, traveling the world, buying a cottage in Scotland, I want you to choose it freely, not because you think you owe me anything. Eliza leaned into his touch, feeling the warmth of his palm against her cheek. 3 weeks ago, she'd been a ghost. Now a duke was telling her he loved her, and she had the power to choose what happened next. I don't know what I want yet, she said honestly. I don't know who I am outside of being Helena's victim or my father's daughter. I need time to find out. Then take it. Take all the time you need. What if I take years? Then I'll wait years. What if I decide I don't want marriage or conventional life or any of the things society expects? Then I'll celebrate your courage and support whatever unconventional life you choose. Adrian's thumb brushed her cheekbone. I'm not offering you a cage, Eliza. I'm offering you partnership, freedom with companionship, the chance to build something together that doesn't diminish either of us. That sounds impossibly idealistic. Maybe. Or maybe it's just possible enough to be worth trying. He smiled. What do you say? Want to find out if a duchess can be something other than ornamental? Eliza felt laughter bubble up, real, genuine laughter that she hadn't experienced in years. You're asking me to marry you? I'm asking if you'd be open to considering it. Eventually. When you're ready. If you're ever ready. Adrian looked suddenly uncertain. Is that presumptuous? Incredibly. Eliza stood on her toes and kissed him, soft and brief and full of possibility. Ask me again in a year, when I know who I am without someone else defining me. A year? A year. If you still want me then, if I still want this, we'll talk about it properly. She pulled back, looking up at him. Can you wait that long? For you? I'd wait a lifetime. Let's hope it doesn't take that long. Tata. The day before Eliza's 21st birthday, Mr. Pembert arrived with a leather portfolio containing the final accounting of the Ravenshire estate. "Everything is in order," he announced, spreading documents across Adrian's library table. "The embezzled funds have been recovered from Helena's accounts. The properties are all properly deeded in your name. Your investment portfolio is strong. Lady Eliza, you are officially one of the wealthiest young women in England." Eliza stared at the numbers, trying to make them feel real. £230,000. Blackthorn Hall. A townhouse in Bath. Shares in railway companies, shipping ventures, manufacturing operations her father had invested in years ago. "This is mine," she said wonderingly. "Actually, mine. Entirely and completely. As of tomorrow, when you turn 21, you'll have full legal authority to manage it all." Pembert smiled, a rare expression on his usually severe face. "I knew your father well, Lady Eliza. He would be very proud of how you fought for this." After Pembert left, Eliza walked through Ashford House, touching surfaces, looking at artwork, trying to ground herself in reality. Catherine found her in the portrait gallery, staring at a painting of Adrian's mother. "Having second thoughts?" Catherine asked. "Having first thoughts. Real thoughts about what I actually want." Eliza turned. "I don't want to live at Blackthorn Hall. Too many bad memories." "Sensible. Sell it or lease it to someone who'll appreciate it properly. I want to do something meaningful with the money, not just live off it like some pampered aristocrat." "Also sensible. What did you have in mind?" Eliza thought of Mrs. Halloway's boarding house, of the women she'd met there, all of them trying to survive in a world designed to erase them. "I want to create more places like Mrs. Halloway's establishment, safe houses for women escaping bad situations. Not charities that make them feel like beggars, actual homes where they can rebuild their lives with dignity." Catherine's eyes lit up. "That's brilliant. I want to fund education programs. Help women learn skills so they're not dependent on husbands or fathers or brothers for survival. Even better. And I want to change the laws." Eliza's voice grew stronger. "The guardianship laws that let Helena control me. The competency standards that let doctors diagnose women they've never examined. The financial regulations that give men complete control over their wives' inheritances. I want to tear it all down and rebuild it so what happened to me can't happen to anyone else." "Now you sound like Adrian." Catherine's smile was proud. "He's going to love this." "Will he? Or will he think I'm being radical and unrealistic?" "He'll think you're being exactly who you are. Someone who doesn't accept injustice quietly." Catherine squeezed her hand. "Besides, he's been trying to change those same laws for years. Having a wealthy ally with personal experience of their failures, he'll be thrilled." That evening, over dinner, Eliza shared her plans with Adrian. She watched his face carefully, waiting for doubt or dismissal. Instead, he set down his wine glass and looked at her with something that might have been awe. "You're going to change the world," he said quietly. "I'm going to try. I'll probably fail at most of it. Maybe, but you'll succeed at enough to matter." Adrian leaned forward. "I have connections in Parliament, allies who've been trying to reform guardianship law for years. If you're serious about this, I'm completely serious." "Then let me help, not lead. Help. This is your mission, your vision. But I can open doors, make introductions, provide political cover when the backlash comes." "There will be backlash. Enormous backlash. You'll be threatening the entire social structure. Men who benefit from current laws will fight you. Women who've internalized that structure will criticize you. Society will call you radical, dangerous, unfeminine." "Good." Eliza smiled fiercely. "Let them call me whatever they want. I'm done being quiet to make other people comfortable." Adrian raised his glass. "To Lady Eliza Ravenshire, who survived erasure and decided to make sure no one else has to." They drank, and Eliza felt something settle in her chest. Purpose, direction, the beginning of an answer to the question of who she wanted to be. Then, her 21st birthday dawned clear and bright. Eliza woke in her room at Ashford House and lay still for a moment, testing the feeling of this day. She was 21, legally independent, financially secure, free. The weight of it was staggering. Catherine appeared with breakfast on a tray and an enormous smile. Happy birthday, darling. You're officially an adult in the eyes of the law. How does it feel? Terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. Perfect. That's exactly how it should feel. Catherine handed her an envelope. This arrived this morning from Blackthorn Hall. Eliza's chest tightened. She opened it carefully and found a single sheet of paper, written in Molly's careful script. Dear Lady Eliza, all us servants wanted to write and say happy birthday and congratulations. We heard what happened in court and we're all so proud of you. You were always kind to us, even when things were bad. Mrs. Brennan says to tell you she's sorry she couldn't testify, but she hopes the help she gave was enough. The Countess is gone now, packed up and left in the night with just one trunk. We don't know where she went, and honestly, we don't care. Mr. Pembert came and spoke to all of us about what happens to the estate. Some of us are worried about our positions, but he said you'd make sure we were taken care of. That means the world to us. Thank you for not forgetting us even when you were fighting for yourself. You're a true lady, the kind your father would be proud of. With respect and affection, Molly and all the Blackthorn Hall staff. Eliza's vision blurred with tears. She'd been so focused on her own freedom that she hadn't thought about the servants, the people whose lives were tangled up in the estate's fate. I need to go to Blackthorn Hall, she said. Catherine raised an eyebrow. Today? On your birthday? Today. Before I lose my nerve. Eliza set down the letter. Those people helped me when they had nothing to gain and everything to lose. I owe them more than a letter from my solicitor. Then we'll go together. Catherine stood decisively. Adrian will insist on coming too, so we might as well tell him now and save the argument. They arrived at Blackthorn Hall by mid-morning. The estate looked different in daylight, smaller than Eliza remembered, less imposing. The prison that had loomed so large in her mind was just a house after all. The servants gathered in the entrance hall, nervous and uncertain. Molly stood at the front, her red hair bright in the morning sun streaming through the windows. Lady Eliza, she breathed, you came. Of course I came. Eliza looked at the assembled faces. People who'd known her as a child, who'd watched her father die, who'd witnessed Helena's cruelty and done what little they could to help. I wanted to thank you all properly, for the kindness you showed me when you didn't have to. You were always good to us, my lady, Mrs. Brennan said, her voice thick with emotion. It was wrong, what the Countess did. We all knew it. Some of you risked your positions to help me escape. Mrs. Brennan, you let Mr. Finch and me into the house. You could have been arrested for that. Should have been arrested sooner for not speaking up when it might have mattered. The cook wiped her eyes. I'm glad you won, my lady. You deserved to win. Eliza moved through the group, thanking each person individually, learning their names, hearing their stories. The footman who'd secretly delivered letters for her. The scullery maid who'd left extra food in the library. The gardener who'd kept her mother's roses alive even when Helena ordered them torn out. They'd all been fighting for her in small ways, risking what little they had. I've made a decision about the estate, Eliza announced. I'm not going to live here. Too many difficult memories. But I'm not abandoning it either. She pulled out the document Pembert had prepared. I'm converting Blackthorn Hall into a school, a place where young women can learn trades, business skills, financial management, everything they need to support themselves independently. The servant stared at her in shock. You want to turn it into a school? Molly whispered. A school in residence, a place where women who've been told they're not smart enough or capable enough can prove otherwise. Eliza smiled. And I'm going to need staff who understand what we're trying to do. People who've seen firsthand what happens when women have no options. If any of you want to stay and help build this, you'll have positions. Better pay, better conditions, and the satisfaction of knowing you're changing lives. Mrs. Brennan laughed, a sound of pure joy. You want us to help you run a school for independent women? Lady Eliza, your father would be beside himself with pride. I hope so. Eliza looked around the entrance hall, seeing it with new eyes. This house was my prison. I'm going to turn it into someone else's liberation. The servants erupted in cheers. Outside, Adrian waited by the carriage, leaning against it with his arms crossed. When Eliza emerged, he straightened. How did it go? I just turned my family estate into a school for rebellious women. How do you think it went? Adrian laughed, deep and genuine and full of delight. I think it went perfectly. I also think you're going to scandalize half of London society. Only half? I must be losing my touch. Eliza took his offered hand as he helped her into the carriage. Take me back to London, Your Grace. I have a revolution to plan. 6 months later, Eliza stood in the ballroom of her newly purchased London townhouse, a beautiful Georgian building in Bloomsbury, close enough to Parliament to be useful, but far enough from Mayfair to make a statement. The room was full of women, reformers, activists, writers, educators, all of them brilliant, all of them fighting to change a system designed to keep them powerless. Ladies, Eliza called, and the room quieted. Thank you for coming. I know you're all busy with your own work, but I wanted to gather you because I believe we're stronger together than apart. She outlined her vision: safe houses in every major city, education programs, legal advocacy for women trapped in situations like hers. As she spoke, she saw heads nodding, eyes lighting up, the spark of possibility catching fire. This is ambitious, Lady Margrave said when Eliza finished. The kind of ambitious that makes enemies. I've already made enemies. They tried to lock me in an asylum. What more can they do? Eliza smiled. Besides, I'm not doing this alone. Every woman in this room has expertise I need: legal knowledge, political connections, educational experience. If we pool our resources and work together, we could actually change things, someone finished. Yes, we could. The women voted unanimously to form an alliance. They called it the Ravenshire Foundation, which made Eliza uncomfortable until Catherine pointed out that it gave them legitimacy and protection. People will hesitate to attack an organization bearing a name associated with a duke, she said practically. Use it. Over the following months, the foundation grew. They opened their first safe house in London, then Bath, then Manchester. They funded scholarships for women at universities beginning to accept female students. They hired lawyers to challenge unjust competency rulings and guardianship arrangements, and slowly, painfully, they began to win. A landmark ruling allowed a woman to challenge her father's control of her inheritance. A doctor who'd signed false commitment papers lost his medical license. Parliament began discussing guardianship reform, driven by a duke who'd made it his personal mission and a wealthy heiress who refused to let anyone forget why it mattered. Helena, meanwhile, had disappeared. Rumors placed her in France, living under an assumed name. Her society connections severed. Lord Ashford had been forced to resign from several committees after his role in the conspiracy came to light. Dr. Whitmore practiced in obscurity in a small village, his reputation destroyed. The people who'd tried to erase Eliza had been erased themselves. The poetic justice was almost too perfect. 1 year to the day after the hearing, Adrian found Eliza in her study, surrounded by correspondence and reports from the Foundation's various projects. You're working on your anniversary, he observed. It's not an anniversary, it's just the day I won my freedom. Exactly. An anniversary. He held out his hand. Come with me. I have something to show you. She let him lead her to the garden behind her townhouse, a small space she'd been too busy to properly tend. But tonight, it was transformed. Lanterns hung from the trees, casting golden light over the flowers that someone had planted in careful rows. In the center, a small table was set for two. What is this? Eliza asked. A reminder that you're allowed to celebrate yourself occasionally. Adrian pulled out a chair. You've spent a year changing the world. Tonight, let the world take care of itself for a few hours. They ate dinner under the stars, talking about everything and nothing, the Foundation's next project, a ridiculous scandal involving a viscount and a sheep, their favorite passages from books they'd both read. It felt easy, natural, like they'd been doing this for decades instead of 1 year. When the meal ended, Adrian stood and offered his hand again. Dance with me. There's no music. Then we'll make our own. They swayed together in the lamplight, no music except the city sounds around them and their own breathing. Eliza rested her head against Adrian's chest and felt his heartbeat, steady and sure. You asked me to wait a year, he said quietly. It's been a year. I know. Have you figured out who you are yet? Eliza thought about the question, about the woman who'd been erased and the woman she'd become, about the foundation she'd built, and the lives she'd changed, and the future she was creating. "I'm someone who doesn't accept injustice quietly," she said. "Someone who believes in fighting even when the odds are impossible. Someone who wants to build rather than simply inherit. I'm the daughter my father hoped I'd be, and the Duchess I never knew I wanted to become." Adrian pulled back enough to see her face. "Duchess? If the offer still stands." Eliza smiled up at him. "I believe you asked me a question a year ago, something about whether I'd be open to considering marriage." "I did ask that, yes?" "Then consider this my answer." She stood on her toes and kissed him, not brief this time, but deep and sure and full of promise. "Yes, Your Grace. I'd very much like to find out if a duchess can be something more than ornamental." Adrian's laugh was joy and relief and triumph all at once. "You're already so much more than ornamental. You're extraordinary." "Then let's be extraordinary together." He kissed her again, and somewhere in London the future they'd been building shifted from possibility to certainty. They married 3 months later in a ceremony that scandalized traditionalists and delighted reformers. Eliza wore blue instead of white, the same sapphire shade from her first night of freedom. She walked down the aisle alone, refusing to be given away by any man. The guest list was a political statement: reformers and radicals mixed with traditional aristocrats, working women from the foundation sitting beside duchesses, Mrs. Halloway, and her boarding house residents in places of honor. When the vicar asked if Eliza would obey her husband, she looked at Adrian and said clearly, "I will love, honor, and partner with him, but I will not obey anyone ever again." The church erupted in shocked whispers. Adrian smiled and said, "That's the only answer I wanted to hear." They modified the rest of the vows similarly: partnership instead of submission, equality instead of hierarchy. It wasn't legally binding, but it was symbolically powerful. By the time they walked out of the church as Duke and Duchess of Blackwood, half of London society was clutching their pearls in horror, and the other half was cheering. Eliza couldn't have planned it better. 5 years later, Duchess Eliza Blackwood stood before Parliament's Reform Committee, testifying about proposed changes to guardianship law. She was 32 weeks pregnant, her belly prominent beneath her elegant gown, and she refused to let that stop her. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying through the chamber, "you have before you legislation that could prevent what happened to me from happening to countless other women. The question is whether you have the courage to pass it." She laid out the case with precision: statistics on wrongful commitments, examples of financial abuse, testimony from women whose lives had been destroyed by unjust guardianship arrangements. When she finished, the committee chairman, a man who'd once voted against every reform Adrian proposed, cleared his throat. "Your Grace, your testimony has been illuminating. I move that we advance this legislation to a full parliamentary vote." The motion passed. Outside the chamber, Adrian waited with Catherine and a crowd of Foundation supporters. When Eliza emerged, he swept her into his arms despite her protesting laugh. "You were magnificent," he said. "I was heavily pregnant and probably terrifying." "Magnificently terrifying. My favorite combination." He placed a hand on her belly, where their daughter was doing acrobatics. "She's going to be just like you." "Then you're in for a very difficult 20 years. "I'm counting on it." They walked out of Parliament together, surrounded by friends and allies, into a London that was slowly, painfully beginning to change. Behind them, the wheels of reform began to turn, driven by a woman who'd refused to stay erased. 10 years after the hearing, Eliza stood in the garden at Blackthorn Hall, now the Ravenshire Academy for Women, and watched young women stream across the grounds, books under their arms, discussing philosophy and mathematics and business with the same intensity she'd once brought to reading Milton in secret. The school had grown beyond her wildest dreams. 200 students currently enrolled, learning everything from classical education to practical trades. Graduates had become teachers, business owners, writers, doctors, professions that had been nearly impossible for women a decade ago. Catherine appeared at her elbow, leaning heavily on a cane now, but still sharp as ever. "You did this," she said, gesturing at the bustling campus. "We did this, you, me, Adrian, everyone at the Foundation." "Don't be modest, it's unbecoming." Catherine smiled. "Your daughter is causing trouble in the stables, by the way." Something about teaching her pony to jump fences that are entirely too high. Eliza laughed. Of course she is. She's 6. That's her job. She's just like you were at that age, determined, fearless, slightly reckless. I was never reckless. You broke into your own house to steal evidence from a criminal conspiracy. That's the definition of reckless. That was strategic risk-taking. Keep telling yourself that. Catherine squeezed her arm. I'm proud of you, darling, not just for what you've built, but for who you've become. I'm still figuring that out. Good. The day you stop figuring it out is the day you've stopped growing. Catherine started back toward the main building. Now go rescue your daughter before she gives her pony a concussion. Eliza found her daughter Rose in the stables, attempting to coax her pony over a jump made of hay bales. The pony, a sensible creature named Butterscotch, was having none of it. Mama! Rose ran over, her dark hair escaping from its braids. Butterscotch won't jump. I think she's being deliberately stubborn. Or she's being sensible. Those hay bales are taller than she is. But I want to learn jumping. Then we'll find you proper lessons with safe jumps, not improvised death traps in the stable yard. Eliza crouched down to her daughter's level. Rose, do you know why we don't do dangerous things just because we want to? Because we might get hurt? Because we might get hurt when there are safer ways to achieve the same goal. Eliza brushed a leaf from Rose's hair. Being brave doesn't mean being reckless. It means being smart about the risks you take. Is that what you did? When you escaped from Grandmother Helena? Eliza caught her breath. They'd told Rose a simplified version of the story, that her grandmother had been unkind and Eliza had needed help from friends to leave. But Rose was clever and had clearly pieced together more than they'd intended. Yes, Eliza said honestly. I took a big risk, but I was smart about it. I had help from people I trusted. I had a plan, and I made sure that if things went wrong, I had a way out. But things didn't go wrong. Not that time. But they could have. That's why you always need a plan, Rose. Always know what you're risking and why it's worth it. Rose considered this seriously. So I can learn jumping if I have proper lessons and safety equipment. Yes. And when I'm older, if someone tries to be mean to me like Grandmother Helena was mean to you, I can fight back? Yes, though I hope you never need to. But if I do, you'll help me? Like Papa and Aunt Catherine helped you? Eliza pulled her daughter close. If you ever need help fighting for yourself, you'll have an entire army behind you. Me, your father, the foundation, all the women who've learned that they don't have to accept injustice quietly. Good. Rose hugged her fiercely. Can we go see Papa now? He promised to teach me chess. He did he? Your father is creating a monster. What's a monster? A 6-year-old who can beat adults at chess by the time she's 10. Rose giggled and ran ahead toward the house. Eliza followed more slowly, looking back at the academy one more time. Students sat under trees, debating enthusiastically. Teachers moved between buildings, arms full of books and experiments. The kitchen garden flourished, tended by girls learning agriculture and botany. This was her legacy. Not just the school, but the idea behind it, that women deserved choices, education, freedom, that being trapped wasn't inevitable, that survival could become more than just endurance. She'd been erased once. Now her name was on a foundation, a school, and legislation that protected women throughout England. She'd been invisible once. Now she was impossible to ignore. That evening, after Rose was tucked into bed with a story about clever princesses who rescued themselves, Eliza and Adrian sat in their private sitting room, reading companionably by the fire. Do you ever regret it? Adrian asked suddenly. Eliza looked up from her book. Regret what? Everything, the fight, the scandal, the constant work. You could have taken your inheritance and lived quietly. No battles, no enemies, no parliamentary committees. Could I have, though? Lived quietly while knowing others were suffering what I'd suffered? Eliza set down her book. No, I don't regret it. Even the difficult parts, especially the difficult parts. The difficult parts almost broke you several times. But they didn't. I bent, but I didn't break. There's a difference. She moved to sit beside him on the settee. Do you regret it? You could have married someone simpler, someone who didn't drag you into reformist crusades. Someone boring, you mean? Adrian pulled her close. Never. You're the best decision I ever made. I thought rescuing me was the best decision you ever made. I didn't rescue you. I gave you the tools to rescue yourself. There's a difference. He kissed the top of her head. You saved yourself, Eliza. You always did. I just got to watch. They sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling, the house settling around them. Outside, London continued its endless motion, a city that had witnessed Eliza's erasure and her resurrection, her defeat and her triumph. Somewhere in that city, women were reading by candlelight in boarding houses, dreaming of freedom. Somewhere, a girl was discovering that she didn't have to accept the cage society built for her. Somewhere, change was happening, slow and painful and absolutely unstoppable. And in this house, in this moment, a woman who'd once been told she didn't exist sat beside the man she loved. In the life she'd built from nothing, reading about fictional heroines who reminded her of the real heroine she'd become. The girl hidden behind the walls had become the woman who tore them down. And that, Eliza thought as Adrian's hand found hers and their fingers intertwined, was the only ending that had ever really mattered.